a like a nice little motto or a quote, you know, whatever. Mine is, what can you say with certainty? Question mark.
Okay. Sounds very like you.
This is not cool. That is not cool.
What do you mean? That sounds so cool.
I mean, it's like that means there's no definitive, like there's no ultimate truth, you know?
There isn't.
Wouldn't the truth be the ultimate truth?
That's true. Oh no. Oh man, this is great. Hold on, let's tag people. So let's tag Kia. Let's tag Maysa. Let's tag Charlie. Let's tag Mick. Let's tag, I can't think of anybody right now. That's good for now. It's interesting doing all this stuff. It's like a whole process. You got to go through this thing and we set up this fun stuff.
Going online.
And we don't even know. We just go with the flow. Kia, so excited to have you be a part of this. Join in here.
Yes, hello, welcome.
Hi, Charlie.
Hi. Have we met before?
I don't think so.
You didn't. She's not, okay.
No, but I'm surprised because Charlie was in LA and I'm sure paths crossed at some point, and Kia was there too. I think we're just all like, we're all kind of like we're the stars that are shining in the darkness, like all three of us, and more people that will join us. So,
are you still there now in LA here?
I am currently in New York City. I was coming here for a respite and then Corona happened. And so I'm here.
Wow, okay. I guess that's where they needed you most.
Yeah, the plan is to be back in LA soon. So.
Very nice. Well, I mean, New York needed you, and maybe you needed a little New York, you know? So
I have no doubt that I am exactly in the place that I need to be. I'm not resisting it. It's been a wonderful experience. Everybody has been asking me, how's it been? And I'm like, for me, it's been great. They're literally like, my friend lives uptown right near the water. So I go for a walk every day and I have my greenery and I have my water and I have all the nature that I could ask for in a city of concrete. So I am actually in a really good space.
It's amazing. New York, I'll tell you what, New York changed my life. Like I personally evolved so much as a human being by living and being in New York. So
I don't see how anyone can come to this city and not evolve. Like, I don't, even if you spend just a week here, I feel like you're going to evolve.
Yep.
New York just has so much energy and atmosphere and all the things. So yeah,
there's almost like, I feel like New York is almost like this like it's like a vortex, an energy vortex, if you want to say. And there's something going on that, like, when you are in any place in the world that's an energy vortex, like if you ride that vortex, you can like do amazing things. Maybe it's just natural things. Like if you're in a natural vortex, it's like you get to connect with nature more. But if you're in like this psychic vortex, there's also like you can create or connect and do all kinds of stuff culturally and emotionally.
Yeah, New York is an exhilarating place that anything can happen at any given moment. You can be, in Starbucks with the homeless guy down the street, and you can also be right next to a billionaire for no apparent reason. So it's crazy. Like
It's beautiful. Yes, true. That's true. Actually, I met some really intelligent homeless people when I was there. Like, and I hung out with them, spent time with them. Like, I learned amazing things from them. Like some of them were doing physics, by the way. I'm just throwing this out there.
Yeah, no, if you sit down and you like a lot of homeless people are very intelligent. They're very, what they've done and what they're doing. Of course, there are unfortunate stories where some people fall out of alignment and they end up in those positions. So that's not to take away from those cases. But if you sit down and you talk to them and you ask them like, hey, how did you get here? They're more than open if they're in a coherent state to talk to you about stuff like that. And you can gain a lot of insight from their stories. I think we think that they aren't valuable, but they are. So.
Exactly. Yeah, I think today too we'll talk about this more, in our conversation of redefining health. But one of the things that's going to be interesting is kind of like discussing like when people are out of alignment, like mentally, psychologically, and even now with what's going to happen to even people who we think are normal, when we start to get disconnected from our like truth, our like whatever our character is, or I don't know,
Compasses.
our personality, like something weird starts happening, right? People kind of psychosis or like, hallucinate. I mean, we get, schizophrenia, we can get bipolar. There's all these different things. Then how does like psychedelics work with it? How does meditation and yoga and all the, how do we deal with it in a more, I guess, productive way? Is going to be
yeah, definitely.
So Charlie, should we get started soon? Maybe like give it a couple of minutes, or what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, who's our first guest?
First guest is we're going to go with the flow. I think if Kia's here, we can start with her.
Okay.
But let's get this let's get this bad boy started. So Kia, hang tight. We're gonna start off with a little bit of an intro, and then and then bring you on in a bit. Okay.
Nope.
Cool. Whoops. Totally muted her. All right. So where are we? Gallery view. All right.
We'll do it too.
All right, cool. Here we go. Oh, hey, there's everybody. Well, welcome to the Cosmic Labyrinth talk show. You can see that we're, have a beautiful stage here. It's in renovation right now, so don't mind all the people who are working on the set. They kind of like, they got sent home. So like we still got some like logo design and stuff. There's stuff gonna be coming up here. The seats might evolve and change. If you guys know any digital architects or anything, let us know. That's always helpful. So welcome. All right. I always like to like kind of set the tone, I guess you can say, or add a little harmony, melody. And I feel it's really important, as we sit in this space and we cultivate this arena, and you reaching out wherever you're watching, whether it's Facebook or YouTube right now live, or you're on the Zoom call and you're going to interact with us through Zoom, which is awesome, because then we can ask questions and we can ask the people that we bring on here questions. But this thing, Cosmic Labyrinth, what the heck is it? I mean, Charlie, can I get you in my ear real quick? Charlie, what is this? What is this Cosmic Labyrinth? What the heck is going on?
Cosmic Labyrinth is a great place for community building, to really bring people together and really explore all the things that no one really has been looking at for a long time, and especially looking inside, right? And as explorers, as we look inside, what are the things that we're finding? And we want to share all these new ideas, because I feel like there's no, as we can see that the world is kind of changing in a lot of good and positive ways. We can be the new creators and create kind of what tomorrow looks like. So we're trying to be thought leaders and thought provokers and try to find new ways to think about different topics. And today, and this month, we've been really redefining health. And we're really excited about our next topic next month, but we'll definitely go into that later. But yeah, super excited to be able to bring people in the community together to have a conversation about health this month.
And that the thing I want to comment on that. This is the last of our episodes on redefining health. That's been our subject for the month. And every week we've had like doctors on. Like today we got a doctor on. We have doctors, shamans, facilitators, therapists, psychologists. We really are trying to bring together people from different modalities, right, and different ideologies. Because I think, at least in my opinion, when we bring those things together, we are able to tackle problems a lot better, and hopefully also we can make it more fun. Like I believe in the spirit of the jokester, the spirit of the trickster. So maybe we could be a little bit more conscious to have fun while we solve the problems. Like when we approach some of the malignant aspects of our society, maybe we can have fun while we while we balance it or harmonize those spaces. And Mick, you're on here. You're one of the important cosmic trinity that started this thing going. What do you feel about this? Like, not just like, so, I want to get your opinion on like what we're doing with the kids and what's going on here, because we have a whole nother branch with the kids. So what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I mean, this confluence of cosmic minds, I think it's just an important moment for humanity that we've all been living through, where, there's a lot of people are going deep into themselves, and that can translate into depression, right? But it can also translate into greater awareness of the self, the inner self, that can then get shared with others. And then we realize that we all have so much in common with each other if we have forums like this, and that we actually have a lot in common with the cells and the stars, and all of these things that maybe were being neglected before because they were we were operating within kind of a program that the society was kind of feeding to us, and we had to survive in that way. So this is why Cosmic Labyrinth is so important to me, because it's like allowing us to step out of that programming and use this time of reflection to share and spread this knowledge that many of us have been gathering in the time of awakening, even before the pandemic, right? Yeah.
In fact, I would like to add, Mick yesterday taught a meditation art play shop to kids in Spanish. It was like all in Spanish and for Spanish speaking kids. And it was like a art meditation. It was like making a mandala, like a Mayan, like a mandala, and all the kids made it themselves, and they did it in Spanish, and they like kind of learned how to like use their voices and connect with their voices and movement and vibration and art. And I mean, Mick, like, that's kind of like what's so special about what we're doing is we're approaching this from a cultural intelligence perspective. Like, how intelligent can we be culturally, and how then can we share that intelligence?
Exactly. Yeah. And to tap into the fact that every culture has ancient wisdom to share. And it needs to be taught to people. I mean, even people in every culture, it's getting lost too. So it's just reiterating that. And the fact that we can cross-pollinate too, like maybe a person that's not originally from that culture becomes interested in the culture and then teaches it back to the kids that are in that culture, and that's something that's really magical about the Cosmic Lab for Kids, right? I mean, I'm not Mexican, but I'm married to a Mexican, and I've absorbed a lot of the culture, and for me, it's this beautiful kind of feedback loop to be part of sharing the culture.
And so I would like to share that for everybody who's tuning in. I just want to share that, we got Mick and we got Charlie. I want to definitely highlight that, Mick is a perfect, we met a few years ago in Santa Monica, and we kept meeting at awesome events, UCLA. He comes from this background that connects science and art. Like, he has this deep philosophy. I feel it within him. I see it in what he does. Art and science are to get interwoven together, and he's an expression of that. And what he does, and even his service, he does so much great service in the community, working with houseless folks, underprivileged community. He's dived deep into Kundalini, and he's practices deeply and has a great yoga practice. And so I feel like what a great example he is of the West. To me, Mick is a wonderful example of what the Westerner can become, anybody from the West can actually start to absorb different cultures and practice it deeply and have a great respect, and then offer it back, be of service then. And so thank you, Mick, for doing what you do.
Yeah.
As an artist, scientist, what is the mix of an artist and a scientist?
I mean, that's the thing, right? That's what we're doing in the Cosmic Lab. It's the realization that all these points that we thought were separated are actually, you just draw the line and whoop, there they are. They're actually, they're connected, and it's like more beautiful and interesting and spicy to have all those connections and to reinforce them. Yeah.
Oh, very spicy, hot. Dude, I love eating spicy food so I can cry. I love crying. As Indian, I love it, dude. When I grew up, my dad, he'd be crying. And I'd be like, I look back at him eating food. I'm like, oh shit, he's loving that food.
Oh yeah. See, that's why I'm into Mexican and Indian culture, because of the spicy food right there.
we get to do a lot of emotional release, emotional release. And then so we have Charlie over here, and Charlie we met a few years ago as well. And when we met, he was working on he was working on a project, a really cool one, where it was like he was bringing heart-centered technology to the forefront of the Silicon Beach, in Silicon Valley. And like that like blew my mind when I was like, holy cow, like here's somebody in the tech world that gets it. Like, tech is missing heart. Like you look at all the big billion-dollar tech giants, where's the heart? That's why they can't even make good decisions for our world right now, right? They struggle with that because the heart is missing from it. And here was Charlie kind of like pushing that envelope. And so we connected, of course, and we've been talking for a while about doing something where we can, put our knowledge and resources to effective use. And Charlie's a programmer. He's a computer programmer. He's done a lot of work. He worked at Disney for many years doing game development and product development with them. And here he is now studying acupuncture and traditional Chinese medicine. Like what? Like, so he's like connecting this cool thing of like understanding now the human body as like a interface, a computer interface, I guess. Or what, right? Did I say that right?
Yeah, basically. Yeah. The body is kind of like the vehicle. And the mind, the consciousness, and then the spiritual energy. And I moonlight with astrology as well, doing astrology and explaining kind of like how spirituality has a grand design for us all.
I love that. And so here we are, Cosmic Labyrinth. You guys are watching and tuning in to the Cosmic Labyrinth, which is the adult kind of parent version. I'm sure some kids might tune in too. Hopefully we don't say too many fudges or too many fudges or foos. But here in this space, we want to cultivate the conversation. Next month we'll have a new theme. Actually going to be more about tech, right? What was the word that we came up with next month?
Finding heart in technology.
Finding heart in technology. So that's going to be, we're going to be bringing on all kinds of amazing guests who are in the tech world. They're doing stuff, making stuff happen. Maybe they're in the finding heart in tech world, so that'll be awesome. And so also the Cosmic Lab, that's for kids. We just want to highlight that. So if any of you guys know kids, have kids, whatever's going on, every Wednesday we have an afternoon program, which is for kids for 2 hours. But we also do off ones too, like Mick did one yesterday, which was on a Thursday. And next Monday, we have one in Punjabi, a meditation class in Punjabi, a play shop for superpowers, so kids can get superpowers, meditation for superpowers. So every Wednesday, we have these play shops. And so there's different facilitators coming through. Next week, we have a fairy school with Cody and a cooking class, a conscious cooking class with Nessa. And Nessa's like a really amazing influencer, social media influencer, who's giving us her time to lead these amazing play shops to tell kids about why eating healthy is good and showing them how to cook it so they can join her and while she does it. And she's also a yoga teacher and all this amazing stuff. By the way, I'm going to throw out there that anybody can tune into those, by the way. So if you have access to your inner child, like if you can legitimately connect with your inner child, you're also welcome to come to these play shops, right? So it's not just for kids, it's for inner kids too. And we want to advocate that. We want to make things inclusive. And I think there's something about being healthy in that space, right? And I think the kids can teach us, by the way. So some of the stuff, play shops we've done with the kids, some of the stuff they say, like, Mick, remember when we asked the kids about cosmic, like what they meant, what they thought, like their definition of cosmic?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, and what they come up with the drawings or, all the activities, it oftentimes surpasses what we're indicating that the workshops are going to be about even, that happens every time. But
that's awesome.
We got to keep that neuroplasticity going, like you say, and they've got it. You just got to keep them going with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think to me, that's the key. The key is to all of this is that we cultivate a nurturing space for kids. And if we can maintain that as our integrity, then even when we do things as adults, it'll come from a more what is the right? I'm looking for help me out here. What word am I looking for? It'll come from a more rooted place, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my hypothesis. I don't know. I don't know anything. What can I say with certainty, right, Kia? All right, cool. Let's get this thing rolling, dude. Okay, wait, hold on. We need a commercial. Hold on. These things have to have commercials. Okay, you guys, seriously.
Indy, also real quick, I think I'm video spotlight. So change so that it bounces around back to you.
You're not. Oh, really?
Yeah.
You guys, come on, man. I'm gonna make myself.
There you go. Yeah.
Now I'm spotlight.
Yes.
All right. So what I want to share with you guys as a commercial real quick is number one, here's the website. So obviously you can see, and here's the upcoming events. You can always keep an eye out for these, or you can subscribe. If you go down here, you could join the community. And then another thing I wanted to bring up really quick before we get this conversation going is this thing right here that just came out. So this is a amazing, like, I guess a research paper that came out. And I'm a part of this community of physicians and researchers, and they came up with this whole thing proving the importance of the power of the plate, and for the case for regenerative organic agriculture, because our health is so connected, especially right now, what's going to happen going forward. We really need to start focusing on being plant-tricians and understanding that plants are actually the key for all of our global health and community health and individual health. Plants are a big part of that. So I just wanted to highlight this. You know, you can see there's a bunch of doctors, and you know, I wanted to just bring up a couple of these things. You know, let thy food be thy medicine, and thy medicine be thy food. That was from Hippocrates. And doctors today give a Hippocratic oath, right? So it's interesting to think about that, right? The health of soil, plant, and animal is one and indivisible. All right, something to think about, right? So we have to think about how food is made, how much money goes into it. I'm just scrolling through this stuff. I'm just trying to highlight that how important this is for us right now. You know, approximately 92 million Americans are living with coronary artery disease. That's a lot, and probably more now after this pandemic, right? So something to think about that, right? How can we address that? How can we address the diet? And so maybe we'll talk about this a little bit today, and we'll talk about we'll talk about other kinds of plants that also affect our mind and our consciousness, right, as well. Not just the plants that kind of balance out our bodies or have homeostatic effects on our living. So anyways, if people want to access this, they're welcome to. It's something that we should start to become more conscious of, is the research that comes out, the people who are doing the research, supporting those people who are doing the right kind of research, because a lot of the money that goes to research comes from like corporations, and sometimes it's one-sided or has an agenda. So let's support everybody's going to have an agenda, but let's support the researchers whose agenda is something more inclusive and more, liberating, for more people, maybe better for the ecosystem as well. All right, guys, awesome. So commercial done. What am I supposed to do? The rain stick here? Do the rain stick? All right, here we go. Everybody, why don't you put your hands together? Everybody, oh my God, the crowd's going crazy. We want to bring on Kia Charles. Boom, 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 boom. Kia, come on up here. Come on up. Come on stage. Come on stage, Kia. How you doing, Kia?
Oh my
Kia.
goodness.
We're gonna give a high five on stage. High five. All right, you're welcome to sit down. You could choose whatever seat you want to sit on, please.
Awesome.
How you doing?
I am good. How are you?
I am amazing. Learning how to make this thing awesome, and like also be able to bring on amazing people like you. I mean, I want to definitely introduce, you, because I feel like what you've been able to do since I've known you is like pretty amazing. Like how you've been able to be supportive to people, be a light, to be a figure of consciousness, and your also pursuit and your connection, your devotion to hope and to God and to harmony. It's not just about what you do as a coach or like a yoga teacher, facilitator, whatever you do, community organizing, but it's also you're an artist. Like you actually express yourself. You create amazing music. You create amazing artwork, like you express yourself. So like you are doing what you want other people to, or not want other people to do. You are doing what you'd like other people to do so that they would be healthier. So you're like an example of your mindset, your purpose, your truth. So thank you for being that kind of woman. Thank you for being a woman of color that's doing it too. Like, and talking to women of color. I mean, I'm going to point that out, being a POC, you're doing it for POC, it's really important. Maybe more people need to be doing that now, especially even if you're white or black or brown. Maybe we need to be focusing on balancing stuff. Anyway, Kia, thank you for coming on here. I love you. I respect you. I'm so grateful for having you in my life. And I'm glad that everybody here can meet you. And so thank you. Thank you
for having me. My full name is Klairkia. Those close to me call me Kia. So
All right.
for those who are actually like looking for me, they won't find me under Kia. It would be under Klairkia. So that is my full name. But Indy and I have met and conversed and spent time together, and he is one of those people that I have come to know and appreciate being in my life. So yes, you have the privilege of calling me Kia.
Okay, but okay, now everybody else, you gotta get cool with Klairkia before you can call her Kia. Okay, just letting you know because they don't want to cross
You're
that.
gonna come to me, hey Kia, and you're like, how do you know me?
You know, but you know what's cool? Like I want to bring up this right away. Like I feel like you have a really interesting mythology with the word key. Key, like key, you know? And so maybe like tell us really quickly and like kind of share a little bit about oh shoot, hold on. Let me get rid of this. Cancel spotlight video. Oh. I really I'm curious and I wanna ask you about like your like what is key and like how does key connect to what you do in your life, like and how you what kind of service and what you're doing in life. Yeah, please.
Yeah, so it's really interesting because I think probably maybe 7 or 8 years ago, I really started becoming entrenched in my name because my mother named me, and it's a very unique name. I don't know anyone else who has the name. And it was my grandfather's name is Clarence. She took the Claire part of it, didn't want to just name me Claire in honor of him. As he was diagnosed with cancer when she was pregnant with me, and started playing around with it. She's definitively a creative. And so was playing with like, you know, Claire this, Claire that, Claire whatever. And Klairkia just seemed to click for her. And if you look at the time frame, like I was born in 86, and in this time frame between like 82 to 89, the name Kia was really big. Like there was Takia, Lakia, like all these different types of names with the name Kia. I don't know where this name Kia came, and I think it really is like it was something that was received from a lot of pregnant mothers at the time, and Kia was a booming name at that time. And so when I looked up Claire, which means clarity, right? And that's what it means. It means clear or to be of virtue, right? And then Kia in so many different languages, it means earth, it means key, pathways, it means like the energy of, you know, the cosmic reality that we're in. So I told my mother, I said, so basically you named me Clear Channel. Like it's like a clear channel of like a clear pathway, which I appreciate and I love wholeheartedly, so much so that I have a skeleton key on the side of my entire body that is a tattoo that I got 4 years ago on my 30th birthday. And I did it because my mother, when she is happy with me, I'm Key, how are you? Da-da-da-da. If she wants my attention, I've done something wrong, Klairkia. So, you know, just like, so there's always just been that. But I do feel honored to be able to have this as my name, to be able to walk in an example of that and to be here at this time frame. I know there's a lot that's kind of like going on in the world right now, and I did a live yesterday, and I just, you know, really felt it on my heart to say, like, yes, I want everyone to know that you do need to walk in love and you do need to carry that light with you. But please understand that love is truth and you can't ignore the truth. And so I think that that's a part of it. You cannot be blinded and just subject yourself to, I'm only going to look at this because this is what makes me happy. And while happiness is the thing that we need to walk in, we also need to understand that there's a truth. There's a variance of understanding of truth for different people that are in this world. And we have to hear that truth and we have to understand it, even if it does make us uncomfortable, because discomfort creates growth. You know, a child isn't born into this world because its mother is like, it's time to have the baby. hey, let's go. Like, that's usually not what happens. And that's not to say that we can't get to that point, right? Because things are about how you approach them and how you look at them. But for the most part, birthing pains, growing pains, there's a reason why there's the word pain attached to it. It's not to say suffering. Suffering is different from pain. Those are two very different things. Suffering is an elongated understanding of that of which you're going through pain all the time. But pain, sometimes you have to push through pain in order to grow. So this world is having growing pains and birthing pains right now.
That's interesting. That's interesting, Kia. You know, it's interesting you say that, because from a Buddhist perspective, like from my studies of Buddhism, you know, it's interesting to think about how, like, one of the four noble truths is eventually getting past suffering, right? That suffering is an illusion. However, pain is not an illusion. Pain is there to show us. It tells us a lot of things, right? Like you get pain when you get taller, you know, you get pain when you, like, all kinds of reasons, right? But suffering is like, it's something you have to kind of consciously accept. You know, you have to be like, oh, suffering is happening. And then it starts becoming your story, and it becomes a collective story for communities, or, you know, like all this stuff is kind of have a really adverse effect on us.
Yeah. And it's I think it's really important as we're talking about health, right? And understanding what health is. And I think that there are 4 intrinsic bodies that we have. And I think a lot of times we only think of health in regards to just our physical body. But you have your physical body, your mental body, your emotional body, and your spiritual body. And all 4 of those are elements that have to be in alignment. So you can have someone that may be physically fit and physically in optimal health, but if their emotional body isn't up to par or where it needs to be, then something is amiss. You can have someone maybe that is rooted in a spiritual practice, right? So they are consistently in prayer or meditation or what have you, but if they aren't perhaps maybe in, you know, that optimal space of physical health, that can take a toll on them as well. And so you have to understand how all of those are intrinsically connected to the other. And I think it's important for everyone to learn to cultivate a healthy practice in all of those. I don't think that there's a blanket answer for the individual of reality. I think that we all get something from something in different ways because we all relate to it in different ways. You go to some indigenous cultures and, you know, they eat from the ground, they kill rabbits, they do all this stuff, but they're not farming rabbits to kill them. They're not caging rabbits to kill them. It's a part of their lifestyle. It's a part of what they do in order to survive. So it's the way in which we approach things. I get asked all the time if I'm vegan. I think you and I have had this conversation at points in different periods. And I've always told people I am majority plant and veggie, you know, based. However, if I am going over to a friend's house, because I am a woman of color, born and raised in America, and I go over to my aunt's house in Texas, and she has cooked ribs for me to come over there and eat, I'm going to eat those ribs, because to honor her and to understand what she is gifting me, I'm also going to take that honor and say, thank you so very much. Also knowing that my body isn't overwhelmed with meat. So it's okay for me to indulge in that at the time. I'm not going to plague myself with guilt for being able to break bread with those who still want to break bread with me, while still educating them even still and saying, this isn't normally what I would eat. Or maybe I introduce them to a plate of food I would eat, and I bring something for them as well. Because you cannot go into someone's home trying to change who they are by not valuing who they already are. So,
it's important.
It's very important to meet people where they are, so that they understand how they can get from where they are to where you are. Because if you're just telling people, hey, eat vegetables, eat fruit, it's better for you, please they're not hearing it.
No.
They're not, because it's been a habitual formula that has been integrated into their lifestyle, and they don't know anything else. And while
Yeah.
you may know that there's so much better, they can't even fathom it because it's not even in their world.
No, and at least from my perspective, I think it's really important to kind of like evoke curiosity in people, right? More than like telling people, you know. And so like, you know, sharing like a curiosity and like sharing a connection to curiosity, because you know the moment somebody is curious, they'll make the choices themselves. Like you don't need to do anything, you know. And I think that's also what you're sharing is like, you know, being authentic yourself, like sharing, like when we are sharing and when we're being just open and loving, that also is kind of allows for people to stretch, you know,
Yeah.
consciousness. So I got a question for you. And I definitely want everybody to know this, and maybe you have something to share about that is, you know, what's your latest like music stuff going on right now? Like, you know, and do you have stuff to share for people?
Yeah. So I'm working on a project that has been a decade in the making. And it's about one woman's journey from girl to woman and how that actually happens. What are the phases that a woman has to go through to tell the world, I am a woman? Because all too often, and this was recently actually, about a month ago, I think it was Holly Berry. Now, we grew up watching Holly Berry on screen. She put up a post and it was for me. I evaluated it. No one else did. And she said, I'm not that girl. And I looked at it and I said, no, you're a woman. But all too often we have women still refer to themselves as girl. Hey girl, how you doing, girl? What's up, girl? You will never hear a man say, hey boy, how you doing, boy? What's up, boy? Like, that's not going to come out of a man's mouth, but it comes out of a woman's mouth all too often because we're still processed in this space. So I really had to look at, and I'm working with these amazing people right now that are allowing me to explore my voice from now. I've been on stage since I was 9 years old. I've been a solo recording artist since I was 22. And to now be 34 years old and to be able to fully articulate myself in my womanhood and to say, this is me, I'm really not caring what you think, what you say, who you are, what you know, because this is my story. I'm excited about it. But the thing about what I think this process of Corona has taught me is be easy. Just create and have fun. And when the time is ripe for the picking, it will be presented. Right now, I'm enjoying this process with the people that I'm working with. I'm enjoying discovering my voice in a brand new way from a brand new perspective. I'm enjoying being in this body at this space and time and pushing it toward its limits. I'm enjoying, while I've always been very freely expressing myself in the ways of sexual health and sexual wellness and my practices that I have with that, I finally do not care about the world's projections of what they're going to think about it. Because if I'm truly honest, that was always in the back of my mind. Oh my God, like, I don't know, is this going to be okay? Is my mom going to say something? Like, I don't know.
And you come from like a religious background too, you know, right?
My family's got a couple of preachers. You know, like, I grew up in what people would consider a Baptist household. My mother's not strict. She's just very clear. So I've never felt like the wrath of God was going to come down on me. She's always allowed for me to express myself, but I've always been mindful of the upbringing and the background that's there and the shame and the guilt and all of the other things that come with it. For me, just saying the word penis, like, oh my God, what just came out of her mouth? But that's a big part of the reason why I've taken this on, which is like, this project takes you through a girl who is unafraid to share her experiences of relationship, sexuality, sensuality, judgment, and then coming into her own understanding of, I should only have a partner when I choose to. I don't need to. And that inner standing coming from a place of, I'm not blocking anyone from finding me, but once I find me, the rest happens.
That's beautiful. And
So,
I think there's also an importance right now of like in the zeitgeist, right? Like I don't think the divine feminine is kind of in a weird place. And, you know, this work, the sexual health work is actually really important right now. And it's especially right now too, you know, because I don't know, there's a lot of perversion, you know, and that perversion is like in our leadership. It's like in leadership positions all around us, from your kid's school, your like religious establishment, like all of these spaces right now have perversion right now. So,
well, a lot of it is based in the sacral and root chakra, and that hasn't gone up the aligned path yet of opening the heart, of opening the throat, opening the third eye, opening the crown. Because once you fully open those components and you're truly looking at people from your heart space, you're speaking from your truth, you're looking through your spirit, you're understanding from a place of compassion. You don't look at people anymore just from a lustful path. Yeah. Lust means that the rest of your chakras are closed. They're not aligned, because when you can see a human body and not get turned on by it, because it's just like, oh, that's a very nice human body. I could appreciate if a man was walking around me naked and had a very nice appendage and be able to like, that's nice, and not want to indulge, not want to engage. Why? Because I'm looking from my heart. I'm looking through my spirit. I'm not just in this flesh anymore. It's not just ooh, that's great. Now it becomes something much more of a maturation process, right? That's what we have to go through, is a maturation process. Yep. Getting past the, what I like to call the adolescent phase of humanity. The adolescent phase of my libido's going and I just need to release it. Because we think of that when it comes to teenagers, right? We're just like, oh, they're just, they're just horny. Like we understand what's going on because they're teenagers and they're figuring it out and their hormones are all over the place. And it's like, oh my God, they just want to hump everything. Like that is something that you laugh at when they're teens, because it's just like, okay, that's a phase, it'll end. But it hasn't.
No.
It's traveled into adults who haven't learned how to channel their hormones properly. And there's an imbalance in their hormonal process because they haven't gotten outside of, let me just date and hump and do whatever.
I want to also put like, there's a whole aspect of missing the magic in sex, right? Missing the magic and sensuality. Like to me, there's magic. Like there's actually meditation and mindfulness involved that like maybe we could do amazing things. Like maybe there is magic in
but that comes from still maturation, right? Which is, it's still understanding this is much more than just a vagina and a penis and let's go. Like, like, and I don't mean to give these examples, but I want people to understand like there is so much more when you sit and you understand what that is, and like to really get to know what someone likes and who they are, like that takes time and understand. Think of how long it's taken you to get to know you.
I still don't know who I am.
That's my point. And then you want to go to somebody else and be like, yes, I can rock your world overnight. What? How you don't know me? You don't know,
no.
You don't know me. You don't know my life.
I mean, I would even say relationally, I think like we should start challenging each other too. Like, I think like from that point of view, like the people that we do connect with sensually and in an intimate way, maybe we should be connecting with people who we admire, that we like actually think are amazing people doing amazing things in the world. Like what if we challenge ourselves to connect with people in that way? Then are we also connecting to improve each other towards that direction, like intentional relations, right?
I think that it's just like with anything else. It depends on the belief system that is ingrained underneath it and how someone chooses and desires to live, because I don't think that intimacy is purely based in physicality. I know that I have, so literally, just an example, I have been in quarantine with a male friend of mine for 4 months. 4 months, okay? Whoa. We've been together for 4 months. We have had in-depth conversations. We have gotten to know each other on a different level. We have never once kissed. We have never once touched each other. It has been purely an understanding of this being that has been with me 24/7. That is intimacy. We have been intimate together, but we have not been physical. And there's no need for me to cross that line with this man.
Amazing. Amazing.
Because the love that we have for each other far outweighs whether or not we would just do that.
Yeah.
And I think when somebody understands the physical portion of it, of what they truly want to do, then you have a respect for that. I don't think that there's anything wrong with it either.
Yeah.
But I think that we both came to an understanding of, no, but we're here. And we love and we eat and we share food and we share walks together. We share movies together. We are being intimate.
Awesome.
But we're not being physical.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I mean, it's also a challenge for us for practicing willpower. You know, we have this beautiful tool within us, and it allows us to get so much done when we practice willpower. Klairkia, I want to ask you also, what's like, are you doing any like current like retreats or like workshops or any like facilitating anything for women? Are you doing anything right now?
No, I'm not. I'm really, really just focused within, and I'm really focused on my music. Right now, my calling for my spiritual practice is to get my music where it needs to be. And once that happens, then the rest of it will unfold. But I realized that I need to take care of me and what brings me joy. And I was neglecting that for a long time. And I was putting that second. And so now I'm putting that first. Okay. And so that's my main focus as of right now. And I'm, you know me, like I'll do the lives on Instagram and I'll post and I'll make sure that people still have that, knowledge that I'm putting out there, but just, I won't be doing anything like that.
You have always had a great following. Like people really look up to you and they really are seeking your guidance. I've noticed that. That's really beautiful. I really admired that always. So Klairkia. So I've been fortunate, not everyone here has been fortunate to hear you sing. Okay. And you have an amazing voice. And so, I mean, I'm not going to like push you, but it is a talk show, And so when you're on stage, you kind of got to share, where your beauty is, and you have.
Oh my goodness. Okay. I'll share a snippet of a song that I've been working on for this particular album, because I'm not going to sing anybody else's work. So, let me go into character. I don't know what it is, baby, about you, but I can't get you off my mind. What you do to me can't be denied. You got me feeling so fine. You make me feel like I can fly. You make me feel real nice, the only one I can't deny. I don't know what it is, baby, about you, but I can't get you off my mind. What you do to me can't be denied. You got me feeling so fine. What can I say? What can I do? Should I stay? Should I run? Should I leave? What can I say? What can I do? Should I stay? Should I run from you? You make me feel nice. I can't deny. I'm feeling so fine.
That was awesome. Oh my God, it's beautiful.
Thank you.
You got it's cool because there's this beautiful soulfulness. I hear the soul music, the soulful music, but I also hear like poetry. I see that there's some poetry going on.
It's funny because that's probably one of the most soulful records that I have. Not like in that way, but just it was written from that perspective of more of like a bluesy type of theme that I wanted to just, I visualize things. So when that record came to mind, it was like, how would I want, what's the scene I would want to set for this particular person that I want to sing this to? And so I saw something similar to like 20s Jessica Rabbit, like old school, like, you know, just jazz club, that type of thing. And that's what I wanted for that record. So
it worked. It worked really well. Like you hit it. That was awesome. I mean, I think one of the important things is when you have a voice, you know, like you can express such an amazing truth. But what's your advice for people out there? Like how can they express themselves more through their voice? Like I mean, obviously that's a big loaded thing, but like what's your right here in this moment?
You know, I would really say you can start with little things. Like what I challenge people to do is when you're walking down the street and you see somebody wearing something or doing something that you like, compliment them out loud. Like we don't do that enough. I think just talking about positive reinforcement to another human being really gives you the confidence to know that, oh, I can say this. You know, and I think just walking down the street and if you see somebody with like nice shoes or a nice jacket or whatever it is, be like, hey, nice shoes. Like even the response that you get from the other person, they're just like, whoa, thank you. Like they weren't expecting to receive that compliment right then and there. And it really helps with just that little thing boosts your confidence to just speak more.
Yeah. Oh, big time. In fact, can you compliment yourself?
Yeah, you can do that too. I think most people like starting out, but you can always, you know, one of the things that I do when I wake up in the morning is I wake up in the morning and everybody goes potty, right? Everybody has to like relieve themselves when they wake up. So you wake up, you go to the bathroom, look in the mirror when you're wash your hands. Look in the mirror when you're washing your hands. Look in the mirror when you're washing your hands. And smile. When you first wake up, look in the mirror and smile. Crusty eyes, boogery nose, all of it. Smile at yourself. When you first wake up in the morning, I promise you it will start your day different.
I did that the other day and I winked at myself. Is that okay?
Yeah, like just, hey,
I'm like, what's
how
up?
you doing?
What's up? Hey,
you.
I know you. I see you. Keep doing do you. You do you, boy. Not boy.
Exactly.
You do you, man. Not
it's
boy.
Just a nod. You kind of give yourself permission, like for the day, it's okay for you to smile, you know? So do that too.
I love that. I love that. Okay, I got another question for you. For the adults out there, right? What's something that we can do to improve all of our like sexual health? You know, like how can we improve that in a
Inside
collective
or out? Both.
Both. Shoot.
Okay, so you are what you eat. Make sure that you give somebody a tasty meal. It's like, so, you know, when you eat healthy, the other person will thank you for it because you taste very differently when you are eating healthier foods. If you're eating sugars and salts and all that, you taste very salty, you taste sour. It's not the best tasting thing in the world. But if you're eating fruits and veggies, you taste so much more pure, so much more healthy, just earthy. It's a different type of taste. So that's one. From the inside out, eat more fruits and veggies. Your partner will thank you for it, I promise. The other thing is learn to indulge in foreplay. And I don't just mean blow on my neck and kiss me here and do all of that. I'm saying like meditate with your partner butt naked and then open your eyes and look at them and take your time. Like meditate on what you want to do with them. Like don't just meditate. Like, like you can meditate anytime, but like get naked, sit, you know, either across from each other naked or on top, like she can get on top or he can get on top or whoever needs to get on top. I have no preference. Somebody can sit on top of the other person, legs around them, and meditate naked on what you want to do. Like, get yourself ready. So think about like where they would touch you, what they would do to, like, start visualizing it as though you're remembering something from a movie, and then turn it into a movie.
Yeah. I love
so
that.
those are my two things. You are what you eat. So eat good things, because your partner will thank you for it, and then meditate naked before you have sex and visualize yourself in that.
Yeah, Dr. Maysa is on, and she can attest to the meditating naked, I'm sure.
Definitely done that before.
Maysa, hold on one second. Let me finish with Klairkia. But Klairkia, like we always have been asking everybody who's come on the show different questions. And one of the questions I want to ask you is how would you redefine health? Like, now is an opportunity in our like zeitgeist, you know, with the health, all the health craziness that's going on. How would you redefine health?
I really think it goes back to what I was saying before, which is check in on people mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and physically. So if somebody tells you I'm not feeling well, that means something. Maybe they're okay physically, but maybe mentally or emotionally, they're not okay. And take it serious and be able to say, what do you need? Do you need somebody to talk to? No. Do you need somebody to hold your hand? Do you need to pray? Do you need to meditate? Do you need to go outside in nature? Like, health is not just physical. It's beyond that. And I think redefining health for me, for my own self, has been understanding I look great. Am I great? Inside and out. And when I began to ask myself that question, not just looking myself in the mirror and saying, hey, by the world's standards, by social standards, I look good, but do I feel good? And once I really started taking that seriously, my whole health of being began to change. And so I think redefining health, in my perspective, is checking in on how you feel. You know, are you feeling good about your job? Are you feeling good about the things you're doing? Are you feeling good about your life? Because if you feel good, then that lends itself to other things. And then you can eat good and have good conversations and have good sex, all of those things. But I think it's important to lean in when people say, I don't feel well. Okay, well, what does that mean for you? In what way don't you feel well? And then not pushing people, like not calling men pussies if they say I'm having a bad day, you know, not saying man up, not doing all those things, because take it seriously. Like, somebody's telling you I don't feel well. Well, they don't feel well.
Yeah. Amen. A woman and man. A man and a woman. Thank you, Klairkia. And maybe in the chat, once we bring Maysa on, maybe you can add like a link to one of your songs or something for people to check out. That'd be awesome.
Would be perfect. Yeah.
But thank you but stick around, okay? Like, can you just move over?
I'm gonna do my best. Would it be okay if I come right back? I have a.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. Do your thing. But there's a seat right here. It's empty. You could just come sit down, you know, once you're back. Okay?
Thank you.
All right. Take care. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Okay. Everybody, you want to put your hands together. Tad, we got our resident doctor showing up right here. Dr. Alavi in the house. Hello. Welcome to the show. High five. Give me a hug. Virtual hug.
Hi, you guys. This is exciting. Wow, honored to be here. How is everyone doing?
Amazing. Well, they're all hanging out. They've been listening to us and listening to what we have to offer. Then we're going to open it up at the end. We're actually at the end. We're going to open it up to any of the viewers on Zoom. We're also on live. We're on live YouTube. We're on live Facebook. So who knows who's watching this? Maybe there's some aliens watching this. We don't know.
All right.
Well, welcome. You know, it's so awesome to have you. You know, we've connected years ago, and you know, right away when I met you, I was like, wow, she is a really smart human being. But you also had this really deep appreciation of culture and like of emotional intelligence, you know, like I noticed that about you too, which is really cool. But you're also a crazy mofo, which is awesome too, which I love because you're so smart that you know how to challenge the status quo, but with respect, with love, you know, with understanding. And so I really respect who you are as a doctor, as a researcher. I think we're going to talk about that in a little bit, what you're doing with psychedelics, but like, I think from the fact what kind of human being you are, like now that you're a mother, like you've taken to another level. So I can't wait to talk to you about that. But thank you for being what you do as a woman, as a doctor, as a researcher, as a sister, as a friend, as a, you're so many things. Thank you. Thank you for just being a great being on this earth.
I see you, brother. Namaste. Thank
Yes.
you.
So tell us really quick, like really quick. I mean, I could go off and on. I can give you everybody the whole background, but you went to USC, right?
Yeah, so I went to USC for undergrad as part of their resident honors program, which was interesting. At the time, they were letting you leave high school a year early to come start college at SC. So I went to SC for undergrad, and then I ended up back there for residency after a year at UCLA. Did med school at UT Houston. And yeah, so I'm a Trojan, a Bruin, and a Longhorn, if those are resonating with anyone.
That's crazy, dude.
Yeah, it's like all the rival schools. But
That's awesome.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
talk about a metaphor for having conflict within yourself, huh?
I know. Yeah, if I really gave that a lot of credence, I'm sure it'd be like, well, I guess I always win, right? Yeah, my team was always winning. No, I was definitely there during USC's amazing football streak, you know. So at the time, I was very into, you know, going to organized sports. It was more of like a social event, you know, for students. So
Sure.
it was more for bonding. And I see now that, you know, I think that's what a lot of sports are. Unfortunately, I feel like, you know, maybe a little off topic, but that tends to create this competitive nature between humans that I don't think really needs to exist or does organically. And it kind of reminds me of, you know, kind of the world that we're in right now, where I feel as though a lot of people are, you know, coming back at each other with hopefully like the same goodwill and intention, but it's just coming out as us versus them.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, we've trained for so many years in the duality of the competition, right? Like, so most of the most popular shows are sports shows, right? Sport games, right? And so, you know, creates this us versus them, and people buy into it, like it's programming, right? And then eventually, now there's no sports, so guess what people are gonna do when there's no sports?
Facebook comment section.
Are you on my team? Are you on my team? Or are you on that team? What if I'm on both teams? Like you, Maysa, like what if we're on all the teams? Like what do you do then?
Yeah. Well, I think we are all on the same team, just really bad at communicating it. So my recent passion has been learning with the goal of mastery, nonviolent communication as taught by Marshall Rosenberg, who mediated conflict tribes between warring nations that were genociding each other all the way down to schools and students, you know, and comes up with the most amazing solutions for problems that are long lasting simply because he's able to help draw out what people are feeling and what they're needing, because we haven't really learned to use those words or those languagings, as he would say. And, you know, I can say that for my family too. You know, I never grew up hearing the word feeling or need. Just someone would explode at you angrily and, you know, you're left feeling whatever you're feeling, but it was never discussed. And not only that, making requests that get our needs met. So I think the language on Facebook and between individuals on the phone within their family would dramatically change, and this more like accepting, heartfelt language would prevail. And in that language, everybody does have the same needs, you know, from the basics of food, water, shelter, all the way to those emotional needs like joy, or as the last presenter was talking about, sexual freedom or sexual expression, the need for play and creativity, autonomy. These are all basically the requirements for life. Needs aren't actions, they're not verbs, they're not demands. The needs are fundamental. And when you feel a feeling, it's because a need is or is not being met. And then you have to go on and take it a step further and say, you know, well, I would like you, would you be willing to do this to get your need met? So that kind of language is really powerful. And that's what I'm working on integrating into my life and into my practice.
Nice. That's awesome. I mean, I think, first of all, that nonviolent research work is really important. I feel like we need more people studying that, learning that, and then actually going out into the world and applying it like actively. And I feel kind of honored in that space, like coming from my background being Sikh, I feel it's really important that, we start to cultivate the kind of warrior saint, or the peaceful warrior saint, right? And cultivating that space. But anyways, I want to come back to you and be like, and also express that first of all, you're Persian, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So, but you're not just Persian, you've studied other modalities, right? Of like other backgrounds.
Of medicine, yeah. So I like to assemble a large toolkit, and I just, like, if you looked at my library right now, it's just hundreds of books on healing, from electromagnetics to light and the importance of nutrients, vitamins, Ayurvedic textbooks, textbooks on Qigong and Tai Chi, and energetic healing, healing touch, Reiki, which I'm, a practitioner of as well. So my formal background is Western, in that I felt it was important to, I guess, learn what was the most valued in our culture, at the surface at least. And that's even changed since I started practicing. But it's reputable to have an MD. Maybe people will listen to me. And at the time, I joked that it was the best of bad options, because I didn't have much exposure to other fields in the healing sciences. And I'm glad I didn't, because I probably would have gone into Ayurvedic medicine and Chinese medicine. And then the way that those medicines work is amazing, because there's one blueprint that explains everything. There's not like current research that you need to keep up with like Western medicine. So there's just like different attitude towards those modalities, I think. But all in all, I feel like the Western education was very difficult to get, and I'm glad I did it when I had the patience for it, and kind of was, had the blinders on, because I don't know if I could have done it again later in life, for example. So that seemed to be a foundation for me. And then I think a lot of the lines became blurred.
Maysa, I wanted to just add in there that, to me, like in my own personal journey, Western medicine, like allopathic medicine, is very like biochemical. Like it's all about biochemistry. It's great for emergencies, by the way, too. Like emergency medicine,
Yes.
Awesome, right? Western medicine. But like Eastern medicine is very like physics. It's like the physics of like life and physics of like existence. And at the same time, it's very like preventative, like especially for right now. Talk about like important right now. Like it's very preventative and cautionary, right? Like it's cautionary
I totally
medicine.
agree. Yeah, and then that's what drew me to emergency medicine, particularly, which I've been practicing for the last couple of years. And it's because, you're right, Western medicine is very good at solving acute problems, surgical problems that have maybe beyond the realm of, trying to do intentional healing or healing touch, because they're causing so much pain and anguish, or, for example, compressing a nerve that's necessary for life. And people can't, they don't do well when they're in chronic pain all the time. If there's a surgical solution, most people would pursue that if it's a quick fix. And so Western medicine is great for those quicker fixes, but chronic disease is its weakness. And those other sciences really do manage chronic disease a lot better. So I think they're all useful in their own way.
Yeah, I shared earlier a research that just came out talking about the importance of cultivating like more like farm to plate, living and eating, and how that can help a lot with the chronic illnesses and the heart disease that's so prevalent. And I think, I'm curious to get your opinion on that. Like, right now with everything going on, we're gonna get into your like psychedelic stuff, but before there, what right now with everything going on, what's your thoughts, like your short thoughts? Obviously, you could probably give a whole essay on this. But what are your thoughts right now on like how we can cultivate a better health, for ourselves and our families?
Yeah, well, we know, if we're believing in research, because we know that's, can be biased based on the researcher's preference or predilections. But if we look at the research, loneliness and stress are big killers, and they're the the most prevalent killers. Even the World Health Organization agrees that stress is the predecessor of illness and chronic disease especially. So regardless of, you know, viruses in and around us all the time, you know, viruses are part of us as well. I'll talk about some interesting research on that. But regardless of the circumstances outside and inside of us, if we don't focus on stress and managing that stress healthfully, and we don't focus on things like healthful eating and farm to table, good lifestyle choices, and we're isolated and lonely, we do increase our chances of having, if not chronic health issues, acute health issues, and cardiovascular death or cancers or various other things. And so I think it's really important to keep in perspective just how we're living our day-to-day life. Are we checking in with ourselves and our stress levels? Are we trying to maintain some kind of routine that takes care of mind, body, and spirit? It's going to keep us grounded and balanced. And, you know, how much junk are we consuming both by our eyes and the media and, you know, by our mouths? So we have to just consider what we're putting in our bodies. Regarding that, you know, we are more bacteria and virus than we are anything else. And some research that I learned through a great physician, Zach Bush out of Oahu, who's very concentrated on soil health and our genetic biome, you've heard about him, pointed to some research that showed 40% of healthy individuals have herpes virus, HIV virus, coronavirus, all these viral strains found in their DNA. They don't test positive when you look at HIV viral load, and they don't have, you know, the signs or symptoms of HIV, AIDS, or herpes, but these viruses have integrated into their system. And so how did they keep themselves from manifesting that genome? You know, not all of our genes are turned on. There are often silenced through methylation.
Right.
And, you know, green tea is great for that. It can help keep genes methylated. But more importantly, what does that person's overall health and immune system and biome look like that can keep them healthy despite having signs of these viruses being a part of them? And so it's important to remember that if we're fearing any virus, we're fearing ourselves. And so this is kind of this weird look at our true selves, and like, are we going to hate and reject and call it other and ostracize against it? Or are we going to understand that our internal system is our external system, and we are all one, to get philosophical and yogic on you? And what's the health of that system if we're constantly afraid of it or trying to control every aspect of it, you know? And so he advocates soil health. And it's interesting that we're losing that soil diversity, but drinking dirt water, so to speak, of old natural soils might be one of our best tools. And he's an advocate for that kind of treatment. And, you know, a little less directive than probiotics. Okay, let's get the biome from a more natural standpoint. Or better yet, let's then feed those organisms that we want genetic diversity from by giving them the fiber and the sources that they need to proliferate. Right. So there's a lot of ways to approach this problem.
Or we could make poop pills out of Gwyneth Paltrow's poop, and we can all you know, we could sell that and eat that.
Sell it on Goop. Sell that poop on Goop.
poop on Goop.
But yes, they're studying tribes that have been remote from Western influence, and they have bacteria we've never seen before. So, sure. I mean, there's more bacterial DNA in us than anything that we could call human. So
sure. And that information that you brought up is so important, and it's kind of lacking right now in the general zeitgeist. Like, people are not aware and conscious of what's going on within them. And so it's gonna be hard to deal with what's going on outside of them. You know, it's gonna be kind of invariable. But, you know, I think also it's important for us to kind of, you know, how do we have that conversation? You know, I think, you know, and even the people who are listening to this, most of us are, you know, practicing or probably on their way to being in the right space. But also, like, what do we do now? Like, I mean, I gotta tell you what, Maysa, I feel terrible thinking about the people out there who are the kids who are gonna be like, they're going to be all quarantined from each other even after this, and they're not going to be exposed to other bacteria, you know, for a long time. Or how do we help with that? Oh my gosh, I'm like feeling that, you know?
Yeah, well, to answer your question about how to have the conversation, it has to be a really empathic one. And that starts with saying or reflecting on how somebody's feeling. And, you know, I would say, it sounds like you're feeling some anxiety about, you know, the future of the children in this country, and you have a deep need to protect them and to look out for their best interests and to nurture them, you know?
Big time.
And once I can empathize with you and sit with you and feel those feelings with you, then we can easily come to solutions. And some of that's going to be having conversations with other families to see how they're feeling. And I bet you under the surface, most people would agree with those feelings that you're having. And a simple solution or request might be, hey, would you be willing to let our kids hang out without masks in the dirt? And, you know, we can watch them together and share in the responsibility of parenting that becomes daunting when you're all alone and isolated. And, you know, someone can meet the request or not. And that's the point of a request, is you're not going to judge them in any way if they can't meet it. It's basically, you know, that's the whole point. There's no punishment for not meeting the request.
Yeah.
You just find another way to get your needs met. And maybe that means finding a communal living situation where people trust themselves and their immune systems and are willing to get the small micro exposures to antigens that are needed in the environment. But, you know, the CDC did come out and say, hey, we're sorry, we messed up the numbers. There's a 0.2% mortality rate. Now, to see then the political system retract and acknowledge that, or step back and say, okay, we don't need this, I think that takes a little bit of courage on their part. You know, maybe they feel like their foot's in their mouth already and they've already gone on with the charade long enough that they got to keep it up. I'm just trying to feel empathically what they must be feeling. And maybe there's a bit of pride there.
Sure, pride. I mean, do you remember Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy? Have you ever read that book?
Embarrassingly so, I've owned it for many years, and I just got to the part where you have to travel with a towel, and then I was like, I got the message. I'm never traveling without my towel. But,
it's so genius.
I really need to read that book.
You really, and it's so relevant right now. So if anybody out there wants something to fun, like something that's going to be philosophically amazing, but also very funny, that you'll be laughing, it's like, it's worth it right now in these times. But one of the things that they bring up in that book, and a consistent thing in that theme, is how bureaucracy, it eats itself, you know, like, like,
did you say it eats itself?
It eats itself.
Yeah. It feeds off of itself. Yeah.
And so I think that's what we got a little bit of right now. That's what I sense. Yeah, I sense a little bureaucracy eating itself. But let's throw this question out there. I want to talk about this because I feel some of the people tuning in here today, you know, really are interested in what's going on with plant medicine, you know, and especially right now with the zeitgeist. I mean, you know, people are going to be suffering for way more mental illness now. All right. Especially what are you doing with the research, and what can you share with us, you know?
Sure. Yeah. So it's very exciting. There is a lot of research going on now in the psychedelic realm. 2 projects that I have been involved with, temporarily on hold due to the situation, but soon to get back up and running, we hope, are projects that are looking at the benefit of MDMA for the treatment of PTSD. And projects that are looking at the use of psilocybin for treatment-resistant depression. So what we're seeing with these plant medicines, these 2 are known as, MDMA is considered more an entheogen, which means that it's going to help you feel heart-centered feelings and be in a heart-centered space. And psilocybin is considered more classical psychedelic, working on the 5-HT2A receptors. Both of these medicines are found to basically put a halt to what's called the default mode network. Now, this default mode network is what drives people in feeling the anxiety or tension or the recurrent feelings of trauma that have happened in the past. And it's basically on auto. So when you let that mechanism go and you reduce the fear, which is centered in our amygdala part of the brain and the deep brain structures, you can allow somebody to sit with the memory without having the hyperarousal, the stimulation that would come with it. Similarly for, you know, psilocybin, but a little different is you can see something in a totally new perspective. It's like getting a look that you've never gotten before. I think of the allegory of the cave. The people in the cave are trapped there and they feel like everything outside's so scary, but I think it's just reflections that a fire's created. Like everything's out of proportion, but they just don't have the perspective. They're in the cave. So now imagine being able to release those shackles and look outside yourself. And see something in a new light.
When you say psilocybin, you're referring to mushrooms, right? Like the fungi, right?
Sorry. Exactly. So psilocybin is the active ingredient in magic mushrooms. And in the research protocols, it was actually synthesized very successfully for the first time by a group of chemists at USONA, who I have had the honor of meeting. And they made it free science. So just so everyone knows, that synthesis is available. And it's a very efficient synthesis. It's actually more efficient than a previous synthesis that was attempted by another group of scientists. And this one is available because, and they made a kilo of it, and they said anyone who can get their IRB review board, the research review board, to approve psilocybin research, we will provide you the medicine for free. That's how much they are hoping to make this medicine revolutionize the world. And the research in Europe right now, when it gets approved, you know, with more time and more evidence, I suppose, then it'll be made available as the first line treatment by the National Health Services in Europe, and that means that it would be free. So in England, that's what we're looking at. In the US, unfortunately, there'd be a hefty price tag as of right now, and it's not really clear how the compensatory mechanisms will work from an insurance standpoint, but if you're living in England, things look really promising there as far as getting a low-cost treatment. Psilocybin sessions are also available actually as the mushroom in Jamaica, and that's legal there. But because, you know, we want to keep the research very pure and know exactly how much we're giving somebody, measuring out a few grams of mushroom, like 3 grams of mushroom, might have more active psilocin than be converted to psilocybin. It might have more active ingredient than it would if I give them, you know, 2.5 grams of another mushroom or 3 or 4 grams of another. It's just hard to predict the density. So to make the research uniform, the synthesis and the actual psilocybin being dosed can be measured now.
That's interesting. I never knew that. That's an interesting perspective because, you know, obviously, you know, there's a lot of psychonauts out there and, you know, they're experimenting with these different plant medicines. But at the same time, there's a little bit of like fear, right? Like I've heard so much from, and especially from like people of color. Like I hear a lot of fear coming from people of color, like saying that it's going to be like, it's going to like mess them up. Right. But then they're like but then people smoke weed and do other kinds of like things that are like totally, or to drink a lot of alcohol, like, which is like, that's doing like, so what's your thoughts on that? Like the misconception of it, you know?
Sure. I mean, totally well, I can't say I understand fully, but I'm feeling that fear, and it makes sense because look at the Tuskegee experiments, giving people of color syphilis and then not treating them for 40 years and seeing what'll happen, which is neurosyphilis. You're going to be demented if you go that long without the simple treatment of penicillin. You know, so they have been researched on and experimented on. All of these pharmaceuticals are experiments. We can't really know their blood pressure medicine that was approved after being studied on some rats and a few humans and didn't kill somebody isn't going to cause some other major problem. Not to mention those research studies on rats are all done by basically the same species of male rats. And let's just say there's a lot of genetic variation between rats and humans and even amongst rat species.
You think there's I thought rats and humans are pretty similar.
Yeah, right. So, you know, the way that research has been done, they, you know, are completely right to be skeptical. And I think if they're not skeptical, then, you know, maybe they just don't know the history. But you're right. People of color are very underrepresented in the psychedelic research. I guess my plea would be that we need more representation in that research, and that we know that the harms are very minimal, especially in terms of like any risk of overdose that would be deadly. You know, MDMA can have some cardiovascular side effects, so people need to be screened, and they are fully screened for important heart health. If they have high blood pressure, there's important screening done for those groups of people. But these medicines are, you know, they've been used long before Western medicine got their hands on it, you know, many thousands of years. The only way we know about them is Gordon Wasson took a trip to Mexico, and Maria Sabina gave him some mushrooms. She was a curandera and shaman there. And he brought back that information in Time magazine. And then, you know, the Western person was like, hey, this is interesting. And then it got banned for a while for political reasons. So really, it's not even our culture, and it is derived from a mushroom. And MDMA being different in that it's synthesized, There's a lot of data showing its efficacy and safety.
Mhm.
And, you know, some of that data is about to be published shortly. I would refer people to the MAPS website, maps.org, to
Yeah.
learn more about the MDMA trials, but they're seeing a very high rates of treatment resolution. Basically, people don't qualify for the diagnosis of PTSD anymore. So I think when someone's at their last leg mentally, to be part of an experiment for that makes a little more sense if the result of not participating is suicide.
Yeah.
Whereas for a blood pressure medicine or something like that, maybe,
Mhm.
you know, the risks aren't as acute as suicide. But of course, stroke and heart disease and stuff.
Sure.
Yeah, the numbers aren't good there.
I mean, I
Yeah,
think
most
also,
people.
I think a lot of people get stress and frustration from relationships, and I think maybe even
Mhm.
MDMA have some value in therapy, like relational therapy. You know?
Definitely, definitely. That was originally done. Um, and Shulgin was a pioneer in that. Sasha Alexander Shulgin was the first to synthesize it. In his book, P-Call and T-Call, he puts all of the chemical syntheses there for all the different variations, MDMA, MDA, you know, all of these phenylalanines, tryptamines, all the chemicals he says he's known and loved. And his wife, Sasha, Anne, had done a lot of couples therapy. And that's what it was originally introduced for when it was around up until like the late 60s, I believe, early 70s. So, and, you know, there's still some studies now looking at relationship therapy treatment with psilocybin and MDMA, I believe. Smaller studies. So, it's still, yes, exactly. You get empathetic, you're able to be in the heart space, you can put yourself in someone else's shoes more readily. It's great. It'd be a great tool
I
for
feel like
couples therapy.
you listen better. A little bit
Hmm.
listening happens.
Yes.
What's
Yeah.
your spiritual, like what's your I'm curious of what your spiritual perspective on all this is, right? Because these are
Oh,
powerful
wow.
things, right? There's a, like
Yeah.
some of us already experiment with this, some of us might not, and we're
Hmm.
curious. Like, what's your spiritual perspective on these plant
On these
and
medicines. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think they all need to be approached with reverence and respect and with intention. Otherwise, they can take you for, you know, like ayahuasca, a really wild ride if there's no intention. In the setting of the research, we do it in a really controlled way. We do preparatory sessions, we do the medicine session, either it's the medicine or placebo, and depending on the study. And then we do integrative sessions. So you've built rapport, you trust the team, there's a male-female dyad working with
Good.
you.
Okay.
You get the medicine, you're supervised that whole time. You know, you even in one of the studies stay overnight, and the next morning you get integration. So you're not left alone. You're very supported, and that's important for someone to have a process. And we do very non-directive therapy. We just hold space for you. It's called interdirective therapy. You're going to be able to come to those solutions and realizations. No one's going to feed that to you. And I bet you 10 years of therapy, 20 years, maybe a lifetime won't get you some of those epiphanies. So it's very unique and special. As far as spiritually, I think with a lot of the classical psychedelics, you know, LSD, psilocybin, those medicines, I think, can also be kind of a shortcut to experiencing cosmic consciousness and cosmic unity. And, you know, many people have agreed this, and even cannabis, it's not a classical psychedelic, but does have psychedelic properties in that they're mind manifesting properties. It's the word psychedelic means mind manifesting. And so these properties can help someone have a deep meditation, experience a state of unity and oneness. And, you know, I just read the Yoga Sutras. After 10 years of owning that book, for some reason I finally felt prepared to undertake the knowledge in it. And I think, you know, in the sutras, they're like that those things. They say LSD specifically in the commentary of the sutra, and cannabis in the commentary of the sutra. They say those things can be used for someone to develop their psychic power. You know, it can be an access point, same like with mantra and so forth.
Mhm.
But then they say that that's great and all, but really the most organic way to experience it is through learning and observing the mind, and learning to be the observer, to control the mind. So while these are kind of shortcuts, they're going to be unsatisfying at one point or another for someone who's a true seeker. They're going to want to be able to seek and find without the outside influence of anything except for their own intention. And I think that is the ultimate goal. But if you've never had a taste of those experiences and you don't have connection with God or spirit, cosmic consciousness being another way to look at the, you know, the term God. then these medicines can be really enlightening for somebody and help them have an enlightenment experience that maybe would never be achieved in this lifetime because they don't have the time to sit around and meditate when they're busy trying to support their family and put food on the table. And I think that's part of the big distraction game that we're in this life in general. You know, how much time does someone spend on Facebook a day? How much time is someone spending dealing with bureaucracy or driving to and from work? How much time are they really allowed to explore the inner landscape, which is so rewarding when you do? And so kind of like a backdoor in, you can have a taste for these experiences, and maybe that will fuel someone's spiritual path. It has awoken a lot of people, I would say, and hence it's banning after the revolution in the 60s and 70s of people trying to like get woke.
Sure. Sure. It's interesting because, you know, I also see it, it would be so revolutionary in terms of family dynamics, you know, how so many patterns of like abuse can be, you know, we could cut through it, if we're able to share it with our parents or like our loved ones, who maybe are dealing with substance abuse or who know, you know, giving them a taste of cosmic consciousness might shift everything they do. And, you know, you think about like the, what is it called? Not double A, Alcohol Anonymous, right? Like that kind of gives you like a sense of like spirit, like a cosmic consciousness, like trying to bring you that feeling, right? So that you don't need the alcohol anymore. But sometimes you can, if you don't have that community, you know, you might need, but I want to throw this out there too. I think it's also important. I'm curious your opinion on this, how you need a guidance, like how it's important to have maybe somebody, you know, obviously as a physician, you're being in that space, you're being a physician. So you're like, that's like a perfect as a researcher and a physician, but like, what about if people are doing it on their own? You know, like what if they don't have a research space to do it in?
Yeah. Well, you can still learn about the tenets of the therapeutic model, which is you can think of it simply as set, setting, and there's another one. It's set, setting. The set is also your mindset. So that's the addition there. It's not just the setting of like, okay, I'm at a safe space. It's a quiet, calm, you know, but it's also your mindset. And, you know, there's some important things to keep in mind in terms of safety. You know, it's really important that someone doesn't have the opportunity to hurt themselves. So being supervised, and in this case with the male-female team that is aware of that person's history and can be supportive. I mean, the last thing you want is to go down a worse rabbit hole because of one thing that person said. And so being with someone who is trained in therapy to some extent or has an understanding for, I hate the term, but psychedelic harm reduction. I think that implies that there's harm, but that seems to be one of the terms that's being used to describe a support system to allow for psychedelic, I would say, beautification or expansion. I'm just looking at this rose here.
Nice. Oh, beautiful.
Huge
Oh
rose.
my God. I love it.
And so beautification or psychedelic growth or expansion. And so, you know, in the research, we do have a musical soundtrack that goes with the trip because around 20 minutes, the psilocybin will kick in if you've got it. And around 2 hours, it'll peak. And around 6 hours, it comes down. So if you have a soundtrack that works with that, you can have a major cathartic experience. And even people in the placebo group who listen to that soundtrack are really having an experience as well. There's still value in that because,
Wait, hold on.
again,
Wait, Maysa, I want to ask you. I want to get your perspective. What the people who took the placebo, like, did they also trip?
Some people do, and we don't know as investigators whether they've had it or not. It's a double-blinded study, so you're only going to find out after the study's closed what somebody received or didn't receive. But yes, there are people who you wonder, and then other people who are very obviously affected. But they all still stay in the space for 8 hours because we don't know who has or hasn't had the medicine. And we want to make sure that they stay safe. But there's a lot of value in that. And these people are lying down, you know, on a futon or a mattress with eye shades and the soundtrack. And, you know, we've talked in advance that, hey, we're here to support you. We can provide grounding touch. We define the rules of like, look, we can only touch from here to here. If you need a hand, put out a hand. If you don't, say no. I might, you know, reach out and see if you're okay. We're going to help you get hydrated, stay hydrated, not too hydrated, help you use the bathroom, walk you to the bathroom. It's all very assisted and very supervised. So if someone were trying, sessions or something on their own, they have to really consider the needs of the participant and just assume it's complete and utter babysitting.
Yeah.
But more than that, support, emotional support. And I think that's why it's important to know about the non-directive approach, because you don't want to say anything that's going to be judgmental or throw someone in a spiral, and you don't want to take them out of an experience if they're going somewhere. And if they're having a hard experience, that's okay. Help them sit with it and get through it, and then know when you might need to call in for, more help. Like, we do have rescue drugs on hand in case somebody, really had to come down. And I don't believe they've been needed to be used, but maybe once. So those would be like Ativan or some kind of a relaxing medication of the benzos. So yeah.
What's curiously, like uh I feel like I feel like I'm like a vagabond researcher. I don't know if not official researcher, but I have this qualm. I have this issue with in vitro versus in vivo. Do you know what I'm talking about? So, like, can you share like maybe you have an idea of what I'm saying, and maybe you could share like what are your thoughts on that? Like the verses on that.
Yeah. Well, so in vivo means in a living organism, and in vitro would be like in a test tube or a petri dish or something like that. So I think, in vitro is usually how some of these studies could start to prove safety or efficacy. Actually, there's a new model where they make brain organelles, and they test these compounds on what's called a brain organelle. They put together cells that are like neural cells, and they create kind of like a petri dish brain, which is incredible. The cells have the similar receptors that they're wanting to study, but they're doing that before introducing things to humans. So I think there's value in both studies, but I would consider in vivo more definitive, since it's in the actual subject of interest.
So that's kind of funny, right? So when we're talking about like psychedelic research, for me, it's like the best psychedelic research happens like in like a comfortable home or a comfortable space with like the exact ingredients you're talking about, set and setting, the right facilitators, but in a natural space where people feel natural, right? They can go outside and be in nature if they want to. They could come and, like, it's more like we live life in the organism within the organism.
Okay, I get what you're getting at. Yeah. So we try and emulate that as much as we can in the research by making it look like very homey. It's not sterile looking. It's not very hospital looking. There's like carpeting and there's pictures and like artwork.
You put like dirty socks on the floor and stuff, and like underwear hanging up.
Not that comforting at home. Oh, and I wanted to mention setting and also the dose. The dose is really important, especially when you're dealing with like microns, like with LSD. Like, you can make a big difference in the experience or the intensity of it by how much you give someone or how much somebody takes. So that's also really important to keep in mind. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's important. Dose is definitely important.
Yeah, I don't want to screw that up. Got to be really cautious.
Yeah, and so the reason I brought up in vivo versus in vitro is I also ask researchers, and as we continue to develop research and get better at it and improve, I think we're not even at the optimum at the way we research, right? Is also observing, like, does research, like, there's in vivo versus in vitro, and that some of those in vitro situations you'll never be able to emulate that in real life, in like a real system, an organic system. Can't replicate the in vitro research, I thought you were talking about that, like with the rats, and the research we do with rats, or the research we do in a certain space. It's gonna be impossible to kind of take in the other variables that happen in the real world.
Yeah. So I think the research tries to mitigate that by having like the similar setup for every individual, or every individual site. So down to like the furniture in a lot of cases, and down to the soundtrack in some studies. So they're trying to make it reproducible, because the goal is to bring this out to the masses in some kind of like psychedelic healing centers or clinics. And each of those practitioners will have had to go through the training that, for example, the training that we have done at our sites. And so yeah, there will be some level of wanting to replicate it, but exactly the idea of doing things at home. To that note, some ketamine treatments are allowed at home in certain states. So the intranasal ketamine, some people are able to give their patients the lozenges to take
Right.
home with them and to do in the comfort of their home. I
Nice.
think there's a lot of value in that. I mean, ultimately, I think the goal, as I see it, is to deschedule these compounds so people can use them responsibly in their own manner, because I don't believe them to be as addictive as things like heroin or opiate prescription pills, which are just given freely to people for, you know, any number of reasons. And so I think really that's the freedom, is like, let's liberate these compounds, let's liberate these plants, let's liberate the human consciousness and liberate the human mind. And let's do it in a way where people in the culture are safe to do that, you know, in countries where everything's legal, like as I understand it, Portugal is one of them. There's more money put in the rehabilitation. So some people are going to have addictive profiles, and maybe that's a family history, but those people are going to be able to get addicted to sugar and to whatever else. So let's help that addictive personality, not just ban all these compounds saying that they're addictive, because it's just not shown to be true.
So,
Yeah.
I over the past couple of years have been involved in the decriminalization
Mm-hmm.
project, and especially in Oakland, I was a part of that, and you know, it's decriminalized now in Oakland, and I think everybody in whatever city you're in right now, it's worth showing up to your city hall, you know, getting together with a group. If you need resources, they are groups now forming. I mean, maybe you even know some of them. Maysa. I mean, Maps is great to connect with, you know, to like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and then you know, get and you from city to city from that project, not from the federal perspective, but like maybe we need to
Right.
like do this by city. And
Yes.
also these things might be helpful for our communities, right? Like,
Yes.
especially with this pandemic, this is going to be a really important step in us progressing,
Mm-hmm.
in my
Yeah, I
opinion.
agree. And these medicines were originally done in the community, within the community. You know, for example, drinking ayahuasca brew was done as community, and a lot of these ceremonies were something that was like a rite of passage for individuals. So they felt like they were entering a new era of manhood. They didn't have to go and, you know, commit acts of violence or shoot guns or do something, you know, destructive to show that they're a man now. They would have had a pretty profound experience. And if you look at the research from Hopkins, you'll see that people who, you know, are diagnosed with cancer and have anxiety, they're ranking their psilocybin experience as one of the top 5 most influential experiences of their life. So these
Wow.
are profound medicines that have profound capacity healing. So
Yep.
I do really think that it's, you know, the reason they're kept locked down is political. So
Big
I think
time.
we do have to go on a city to city basis and, you know, fight that internally, because the only movements that have had any resonance are the grassroots movements. Like you said, it's not going to start like the feds aren't just going to be like, hey, everyone, here's a bunch of mushrooms and go for it. You know, you're going to have to make a case for your spiritual, you know, community or religious community, which, like, for example, ayahuasca churches have been allowed to serve. So maybe
Unless,
that's one way to approach it.
unless Mesa, I can get the Supreme Court to come with me to a mushroom party. Like, we'll do like an awesome mushroom
Mhm.
party with the Supreme Court. Boom, done. You know.
Right. Well, I bet they've all used these medicines, you know. Unfortunately, they're like, there's higher hands holding the puppet strings.
Yeah.
So, you
Yeah.
know, it's kind
So
of like a club of sorts, if you get my drift. And I think it's been kind of getting dark. I mean, this whole thing has encouraged me to look deeper. And, you know, the term conspiracy theory was coined by the CIA to discredit free thinkers. They made that term up. So
big time.
if people are tossing that term around, you know, they've been mesmerized. There's a lot of hypnosis and mesmerization in the media right now.
Yep.
And that's the thing, when you're hypnotized and mesmerized, you don't realize that the message is right in front of you, what somebody's agenda is, whether that's depopulation or fear or destroying the American economy or the world economy or travel or vaccination passports or whatever the agenda is. I really think now is a time to be the most critical thinker, and that's why public education has failed our students and our children, is it does not encourage critical thinking of any kind.
Yep.
You know, I'm a product of that education, but I also have a father who's, you know, a physicist and MIT trained, and a mother, both from Iran, who came to America for the best education. And education has always been highly valued in our family. And so I think, the fact that kids aren't able to go to schools, we're going to have to come up with creative solutions so that they can mingle. Like, back to your point about these children, they can mingle, they can be together, they can know that their immune system is enough, that they are enough, that they don't need, paraphernalia or masks or whatever else, or bubble boy, bubbles, that they are enough. What message are we sending children when we're telling them? There was a video I saw, like a kid's being sprayed down and cleaned and wiped and sanitized, and he's, wearing a mask and all these things. And I just think there's really subtle messages. When you wear a mask and you can't see someone's facial expression, not only do people who are hard of hearing not be able to read your lips, but you can't tell if someone's aggressive, if they're happy. It's
micro information.
It's an important message that's done through the mouth, through the teeth. And yes, you can see if someone's smiling by their eyes, but there's a huge amount of information we're getting from somebody's mouth and their movements and their expressions. And, they're inhaling their own CO2 byproduct all day. Like, elderly people are passing out on buses from wearing RN95s. They're not meant to be worn all the time.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
The people who wear those are when they go in to see a patient with tuberculosis in a negative pressure room.
Yeah.
And you wear it for that encounter, and then you leave the room. The patient's not wearing it in the room the whole time. They're in a negative pressure room. And the transmittable droplets in that disease state are very small. The bacilli are so small that they need a specific filtration level of a mask. So if the distancing works and the masks work, why the lockdown and all these other things? Like, people need to really be questioning right now everything. I just learned there's this thing now where you can just basically make a video of something that didn't happen with the person saying things they never said.
Deepfake.
Using AI.
Yep.
Yeah. What the hell? So now you can't even believe the videos you see. And I know this as a yogi. I know this. I know that all I can really believe is that what is the truth behind everything is that there's an energy. I think it's book 2, Sutra 33, or one of those sutras in the second book. I think it's like, learn to see things for the truth that they are. Look at something until you can see its truth. If you kill a tree, if a tree dies and it turns into a chair, and then that chair falls apart and it turns into firewood, and then that firewood is burned and turns into ash, is that not the same tree? It's an energy. That's all that really exists. That's all that the truth really is. So these energies, not to be confused, don't confuse that truth with the shapes and forms that it shifts between. Then you're going to get lost in the delusion and the cosmic play. And you're going to be swirling and spiraling right now.
Yep.
So
unless you want to be like a whirling dervish, like, right? I'm just going to swirl with the universe, with the galaxy. What's Maysa, we ask everybody this whole month, we've been doing, the theme has been redefining health. So for you, what would redefining health be to you? Like, if you were to redefine it now?
I believe that health is the state of inner peace. I think it's really that simple. Redefine your health as your state of inner peace. Are you okay being where you are right now in this moment, which is the real only truth that you have in terms of your perception? Or are you searching to be somewhere else, in the present or the past or the future? Like, your health is your state of your internal mind. And that mind is, I guarantee you, chattering for everybody, even when you sleep. There's a story where a crystal owner in a crystal shop gets a monkey, his pet monkey, and he's like, oh yeah, this monkey is so great, so great. Monkey goes and destroys all his crystals, jumping around the shop like crazy. He goes to the wise man, travels very far to go see this wise man. The wise man says, put a rope in your shop, hang it from the ceiling. It's like, what? This guy's crazy. So he goes back and he thinks about it. Meanwhile, monkey's destroying his crystal shop. Hangs the rope. It's like, what do I have to lose? Monkey hops on the rope, goes up and down, up and down, up and down, all day, up and down the rope. It doesn't destroy a single crystal more. So the man's like, I got to go back to the wise man and just tell him thank you. He kisses his feet. Thank you so much. How did you know? And he said, the monkey is your mind and the rope is the mantra. So if your mind is that monkey, which is, it's in all of us, and you don't find a rope, be it mantra, prayer, meditation, riding your bike, drawing, if you don't find a way to control that mind, it will destroy your crystal shop.
Yep.
And I
That
guess
peace of
some
mind.
people stand to benefit from that, you know, the hysteria and the purchased mass media. So, and wonder why. Got to question those things. Who stands
Yeah.
to benefit? Follow the money, I guess, you know.
Or let's use that same method and the same strategy on itself, is reverse it, you know, like that's kind of my thoughts on that. But that kind of opens up the floor. Like I would love for, you know, anybody else who's on this call to open up, if you guys want to ask any questions to Maysa. Do you want to have any thoughts you want to share about what we've talked? I'm going to unmute everybody. So anybody who wants to get unmuted, you're welcome to join. Allow participants, good. Okay, so cool. So if anybody wants to ask any questions, they're welcome to. They can just talk. Mick, are you there?
I am here, yes.
Oh,
Right. I don't have a video, but that's okay.
it's okay.
Okay. Yeah. So, Dr. Maysa, thank you so much for joining us. Just wonderful to hear how you articulate everything, and really, I mean, admire that you are fully interdisciplinary about your approach, and that you can explain it from all these different perspectives, from the very medical to the mystical. And I think this is really where we need to go right now. And I wanted to kind of come back to some of the things you were talking about with managing stress, right? And just so I mean, that was actually for me very much a moment where I was like passing out from overworking myself and having heart problems that got me into yoga, deeply into yoga. And I guess maybe I'd like to ask you if there's anything that you've seen, kind of things that are really kind of just kind of key points that doesn't take people like reaching that point of almost killing themselves, which I think it oftentimes does, to start on a path of self-realization, you know, and what kind of what might be some triggers for that. I mean, I guess other than just you know, taking the
So
psychedelic path.
how to check in with yourself so that you're not on the brink of, you know, shutdown or failure before you really do something. Is that kind of what you're
or
asking?
chronic, or exactly, or disease, or so many situations where people have to get to that extreme point to go on the path, you know, to start finding ways.
Well, for some people, I think that's what it takes. Like when we hit a low that's so low that we really have a breakthrough. I think Eckhart Tolle's story was like that. Like I think he was homeless, living on the streets, and just had this like breakthrough because he was so depressed and so badly wanted to kill himself. And now, you know, seems pretty enlightened now. So yeah, how do we avoid that? I mean, I think it's like how can we check in to have the self-awareness so that we don't get to that stage? And that's going to vary for everybody. But I think for me, I've realized when I sit down to write, I feel usually inspired to write when something really bad is going on. Not when things are great necessarily, unless I'm trying to like keep a practice of it, but writing. And then I look and see what I've written. And that for me is a great way to check in with my emotional state. Another thing that I've found helpful from my experiences, I use this app, Heart Math, with like a little device that does my heart rate variability. Heart rate variability doesn't lie. You can't really fake that. It's considered a pretty gold standard for diagnosing and managing stress. In studies, it's how they measure stress. And that looks at the variability of your heart rate. So you can't really fake it. I mean, you can't, but when you relax, that heart rate variability increases. So the more variable the heart rate is, the healthier the nervous system appears to be. And that's similar in infants too. You want variability in utero when babies are being monitored for safety in the womb as they're being delivered. You're going to look for a certain amount of variability. When there's not variability and there's flat of the same heart rate or it's sinusoidal, that's where you get into trouble. So being able to check in with an app like that, and it's going to record objective data for you, which I think is really cool. A lot of people like to see progress over time, and it kind of makes it a game. But I guarantee you, if you're sitting down and doing the 5 to 20 minutes of meditation, you know, at least once a day or 3 times a day, you're just going to get that solid dose of inner joy and peace that's not going to allow you to kind of hit that wall and have, you know, a chronic issue take hold, because you're going to be giving your body a chance to really rest. And Yogananda said it really well. He's like, you know, the only way you can really rest is heart rest. He says that's the deepest rest. And that's actually where the heart and lungs are suspended. And I think very few people have experienced that state of samadhi. But what these apps do, what this meditation does, is it slows down those physiologic functions. You get about as close to those periods of heart rest as you can, really. And through the meditation, you may actually have a breakthrough where your heart and lungs are suspended for a while. And boy, does that feel restful. So, so giving yourself those mental resets, and you know, whatever it is, it really brings you joy. What I love, my partner is very much like this. He's like, in that moment, I forget who said it, maybe, oh, it's Bashar. He really likes the stuff of Bashar. If anyone knows him, he's like extraterrestrial energy that's being channeled through this guy named Daryl. And it's really amusing to watch. But Bashar says, in this moment, whatever you can do in this moment, follow the path of most joy. In this very moment, whatever brings you most joy. So to be on this phone call brings me joy. Otherwise, he would say, get off the call, you know, just follow that joy in that moment. And if you're really doing that, I mean, it can have some pretty earth-shattering effects. Like you might leave your job and you might stop driving to work, but in that moment, what brings you joy is really the direction you should be going. So your life takes a trajectory where issues like chronic heart disease hopefully never happen. Yeah. So hopefully those are a few tools that might be helpful.
I love that.
Mildly disruptive, but in a good way.
Anyone else? Ardea, Asher? Anyone on Facebook or on YouTube? I think there's Deanna's on this call too. Any other questions from anybody? Come on, you guys got it. We got Dr. Maysa.
I got a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
So oftentimes a lot of people who go on experiential sort of psilocybin or drug journeys, they'll go with the shaman, or if they feel comfortable with the shaman outside of like a medical context.
Mm-hmm.
But and I know, Indy, I know you do these. But I also know that there's a lot of people doing shamanic work that aren't qualified, and probably shouldn't be leading these things, or maybe they should have somebody helping. How do you think about that, and what kind of research do we have on that, and just your thoughts on shamanic journeys and how important that is for leading people into realization, and whether it's better or worse if you have a shaman that's not capable. Is it better to just not have one? Yeah.
These are really great questions. You know, the psychedelic research community is, I see a text about this just popped up too. The psychedelic community is even, in the research community, even being plagued by this, you know, researchers having sexual relations with vulnerable patients, for example, or in the case of 2 docs working with DMT or combo, I can't remember, basically 2 deaths reported from those irresponsible, you know, protocols or actions that they're doing. So I totally agree with you. Working with somebody, working alone, any of these things can have extreme consequences, and there can be some risk and danger involved. I think it's important to know the person you choose to work with very well, to have a level of trust in them and some kind of a relationship. I think those sessions where a bunch of people are in the room and all getting the same treatment and you don't even get to meet the guy, you know, that seems very contrived, and it seems like financially motivated in a lot of cases. I think sessions of psychedelic nature need to be one-on-one or 2 therapists to 1. Ideally, the idea of doing it as a group, I would say, might be appropriate when someone's experienced with these medicines and they're with a group that they trust and they're safe with. But yes, the harm can be far greater than people realize, because then we're talking psychedelic harm. If somebody's traumatized in an experience, which a lot of these individuals who have survived treatment by some of these practitioners in the 5-MeO world have had substantial trauma that they're now dealing with, where they thought they were near to death and weren't getting the support they needed. And yes, a lot of people are dabbling in this as something that's trendy, something that makes some money, maybe. And even the term shaman, that's meant as a Siberian healer specifically. So I think this is just a byproduct of a lot of people wanting access and maybe not trusting themselves or their intuition to be able to set up a circumstance where they feel safe to do it with someone that may not be a shaman or some trained healer, or to do it themselves. And, you know, there's risks with all of that. I know people who just taking cannabis have jumped out of buildings. I mean, it sounds absurd, but if you're under the influence, you're under an influence, and you just don't know if that's a drug emotion or a drug reaction, or if it's real or not. It can be very derealizing, depersonalizing. So gosh, how do you begin to search for someone who's credentialed and qualified? And I think that's the inner circles. It's talking to other people who have had positive experiences with certain other healers or other workers. It's usually word of mouth. I don't think you're going to find someone on the internet and advertised usually doing this kind of work. And then you might be skeptical of that, because I think when someone does good work, the referrals come naturally. And the decision might ultimately be to not take the medicine, or to experiment with microdosing, which can have similar benefits, especially for psilocybin and LSD. A friend of mine just published some research, shout out to Nulufa, showing that LSD microdose is helping treat Alzheimer's. So I think, you know, that microdose technically means that person doesn't feel like they're on LSD. So if you actually know how to dose things properly, you may be safe to just have very minimal supervision or guidance during a microdosing, and maybe eventually none at all once you feel comfortable. I think that there's a lot of fear and skepticism going in. No matter who the healer is, there's possibility for a negative outcome. And there has to be a certain amount of trust, but at the same time, if you're feeling hesitant, I'd say trust your gut instinct, because the medicine can always wait. And you can achieve these kinds of experiences without the medicine. So it's definitely, like with everything in healing and medicine, it's risk-benefit evaluation, and, you know, what do you feel really called to do? So I would definitely tell people what you're doing, so you have someone checking in from the outside. You know, you don't want to like run off in a manic state from getting, you know, inappropriate care. Because seriously, you know, those stories where people run up in a tree and they're like, I'm Christian now or something, and they never come down. Like, you know, there's a reason that
there's a lot. And I'll add in there too, Asher, and I'll say, because you mentioned, you know, that I facilitate these things, you know, I less of facilitating around the space, actually the psychedelic. For me, it's more important to create a container of play, because I think people have lost that identity, the connection to play. And like you were talking about joy, like connecting to joy. And I feel when you're in those spaces, you can connect to it even more, and you can remember that space better. You can remember that feeling. You can access that feeling better. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not trained, or I'm not claiming to have any connection to the trauma, like when you talk about trauma therapy, right? And I think that's where the ancient shamans know what they're doing, right? And I think that's why it's important to go to somebody who's been doing it through generations, and they've been training, and actually they've spent their whole life as a kid understanding how to deal with people who are dealing with trauma and how to access those energies. And you know, that's a work. You don't just like go to the Amazon for one summer and then like, you know how to do that, you know, like it's a long practice. There's a tradition for helping people go through trauma.
And I think a lot of these individuals really need to know the medicine themselves, and you kind of, I don't know, I wonder about that. Like, I know a shaman, for instance, said he warded off an earth spirit during an ayahuasca ceremony, and the spirit was taking color from the ceremony. And individuals in the ceremony, before he even mentioned this, had recounted that, or had, you know, I don't know if it was before he mentioned it, but they had independently experienced part of their journey as black and white. They had lost the color of the journey. So I believe that there are these subtle energies, and someone who's truly trained, maybe from an indigenous lineage, or has just got that kind of sensitivity, will be able to see that, yes, in fact, there is some kind of energy, stealing energy from the group, and to protect the group from that. And, you know, the fact that individuals in the group saw the lack of color as he was describing, that's no coincidence. So yes, I think there's ethereal protection. And personally, sometimes I wonder, you know, if maybe we get thrown so far out there, maybe we don't really come back the same. Perhaps there's some energy or interaction of the energies that we don't quite understand. So it can go deep into a rabbit hole.
Deep.
And that's why integration is important. You're going to have to come back to this material world eventually. Let's make sure that you can integrate back the lessons and not see it as, my soul is lost, or I'm damaged goods, or this or that. If you have a bad trip, let's integrate the experience and learn from it somehow productively.
And we got a hand raise. Oh, thank you, Asher. That was an awesome question, bro. Do we have a Diana? Diana has her hand raised. I have to unmute you. No.
Hi, Maysa, Dr. Maysa. Thank you for doing the work that you do. I'm actually a nurse, and would love to get your insight about how to get more providers educated about psychedelic research, about the healing properties of these medicines, and how can we push this forward? I would love to learn more about that, because I definitely feel, even just talking about cannabis, there's so much stigma around it. It's like, I work in the ICU, and here we are, we have patients on morphine drip and, all these really ridiculous opiates and, like you said, highly addictive drugs that are so easily accessible. And yet we're not exploring these, these other medicines that, have the research is showing works, right? So I'm just wondering, what your take is on that, and how we can, facilitate more conversations like this around that, but get the buy-in, because I feel like we need to get the buy-in to make sure that it's to truly integrate it.
Yeah, well, I see you, sister. You're like me. You infiltrated the system with like a really open mind, and it takes a lot to jump through the hoops to get in there. And then how do we then be an advocate for these medicines in an environment that doesn't really take well to things that aren't, traditional in that environment? So Western docs really like research, so they like scientific studies, and Johns Hopkins has a bunch of them. But it's important that we don't just shove these down somebody's throats. I think the most important thing I would take away is, how do we start to have the conversations, like you said, and it's going to be approaching it by a nonviolent way. So maybe, mentioning something like, oh, have you heard of this and that? And then like looking at what is that person, what might they be feeling? Because when we hear something that we don't like a flat out rejection of something, we can either blame ourselves, we can blame the other person, or we can get in tune with our needs and feelings, or get in tune with their needs and feelings. And I think it's important that we get in tune with their needs and feelings. And my guess would be that their feelings are a lot of fear, unknown, skepticism, maybe frustration, maybe because they need more research, or because they were taught that these things were drugs, because Christina Ricci cracked an egg on a plate, on a skillet, and they grew up watching that and saying that this is your brain on drugs. Maybe they need more truth, or they need more integrity from the institution to tell them, and they need to hear it from the institution. Or maybe it really jolts them at the core, and it's hard for them to comprehend, because yes, not just in the ICU, but the field of epilepsy, movement disorders, all of this. And I think a lot of it's going to take the patient bringing it up with the doctor, and bringing it up with them in a compassionate way, being like, look, doc, I've read some research about the use of cannabis in epilepsy. What do you think? And when enough people ask you what you think, and you're like, I don't know what to think, or maybe you don't have the courage to say you don't know, and the truth to say that, and you just say some flat out, it's dangerous or whatever, I think eventually it's going to wear on somebody, and they're going to want to know or need to know, because there's the demand for it and for that information. And the patients are going to start looking elsewhere, like, for example, like the fact that we don't give IV vitamin C in the hospital is crazy to me. Dr. Dietrich Klinghardt basically acknowledged that he was telling patients to smuggle it into the ICU when their family members were hospitalized with COVID. I mean, smuggling in vitamin C to the ICU, is it that big of a threat to the institution? But it's like, it takes about 10 to 15 years for the institution to adopt any new knowledge. So, even the knowledge of cannabis now, let's say the greatest study gets published tomorrow, 10 to 15 years later, you might see acceptance. You might see a hospital start to introduce it. I think still there's a lot of steps there. So I think it's being really compassionate and empathic in the conversation, and just communicating your feelings and needs. Like you probably feel really frustrated because you need some integrity for the patients, and you need safety for the patients. And the risk benefit of cannabis is much lower than the risk of morphine and all these other things. And sometimes just stating that might be enough to get somebody to really understand that you're coming from a perspective of compassion and care for the patient. It's not, any other agenda. But it's challenging, just like it is having any of these conversations with those who have their mind made up sometimes.
And I'm curious too, Maysa, about how for somebody like Diana and her community of nurses, and they're tackling burnout right now, like her and her company and what she's working on, they're like tackling burnout for nurses. And like I think the research you're doing is so synergistic with what they're trying, because like the amount of trauma that nurses deal with, and the coping that they don't really cope. They don't have any like strategy for coping with the death and and especially right now there was like PTSD happening from the coronavirus, right? So like, but they don't have access to psychedelics right now, right? Or MDMA. Like, and I wonder if there's research that could be done on nurses, on healthcare providers.
Yes. So we call that basically first responders, and they're a big part of the research population. It's kind of tricky though, because for you to be qualified, a standing diagnosis of PTSD made by a mental health practitioner, it's not something a lot of nurses are willing to go get. And that's what's barring a lot of people from the research. It's flawed. I believe you should just be able to test positive for the symptomatology. Really ideally, those screening tests that we give somebody are very extensive, and they can diagnose the condition. Very, very few people are going to access care, especially like imagine a doctor. Then you have a track record of having PTSD on your medical file, and the board could use that against you, and your records could get subpoenaed and say that you're unfit and you lose your license. Like, who knows? But in the medical profession, we work so hard to get our license that any idea of it being taken away.
But y'all have the highest incidence of suicide of any professional, like doctors and nurses. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, it needs to be just offered for free. And I think once it gets FDA approved, once it's descheduled, it's going to be much easier to access. We really need to push it through. It needs to get there. And hopefully that'll be in the next year or two. It just seems like these things are coming up that are delaying it. And it's frustrating for the patients, participants in the study who have had to halt because of COVID stuff. And it's really, it's irritating.
So maybe we could just talk about it more with our local politics and local city.
I think that's important. Honestly, to get back to your question, I've gotten slapped on the wrist more than once for having the conversation of cannabis with the patient. Like, literally gotten reported about it. And there's legal, jurisdiction that would protect me, because there's laws in place that say that the employer or the organizing body is not to affect the medical treatment between the provider and the patient. But I just really don't find that to play out to be the truth. And I've had to kind of hush and duck down and just be very careful about what I say, even when I make suggestions that involve herbs or natural foods. The institution doesn't take well to that. And some of it's like, okay, well, maybe I need to leave the institution. But it's unfortunate, because patients in these areas where I serve, in rural medicine and these rural ERs, deserve somebody to help them truly get in touch with what may work for them. These are chronic, the revolving door of the ER. They're coming back again and again and again, the same treatment and the same, oh, nothing's wrong with your stomach pains. I don't know what's wrong. And then you try and tell them, look, cannabis is legal in your state. This might be an option for your irritable bowel. Or, hey, why don't we talk about natural pain management? It's institutionalized. I think it's self-selecting. We go into that field. A lot of people self-select for something that's very cut and dry. And someone who comes and challenges things, you just have to keep in mind, like, unfortunately, sometimes that comes back to bite you in the rear. So have the conversations cautiously.
Maysa, we have another question from Asher. Asher, hop
Yeah.
on. What's up, brother?
Yeah. Sorry, and I don't want to drag everybody for too long, but
hold on. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. But go ahead.
All right, forgive you. I love you. There we go. So I actually wanted to kind of go back to something you talked about just very briefly earlier on, which is the environment within which patients are taking drugs or having experiences with psychiatrists or anybody else. I'm actually in my day job, and something that I actually am very passionate about, enjoy very much, is building creative space. And we've built sort of, headquarters for companies like Red Bull and Sweet Green, and we're building a new medical facility for USC, and all kinds of sort of creative open space, call it healthy, happy space. But a lot of the research on that space is very corporate funded. And I would be curious if you feel like you would be getting any interesting data from your experiences, or people like you who are saying, you know what, it's really interesting because patients who have a rocking chair in the room experience a lot less anxiety than those who don't, or plants in the room help, or blue is actually really helpful when people are things like that, like data points from the actual physical environment. I wonder if that's something that could be beneficial, not just for your industry, but I know it's something I'd be incredibly interested in, because I feel like people who are in those states are actually sort of attuned to the subconscious that we are. I mean, when we're in our day-to-day lives, we might not be, but we're still very affected by those things. I wonder if you could talk just a bit about the physical environment and what you've experienced, if there's any way of sharing.
Sure. Yeah, in this study, because it's so interdirective, to be honest with you, the participant is spending a lot of time with their eyes closed. And while I personally feel like nature is the best place to take these medicines, to actually be communing with the plants or mushrooms, or where their habitat and home is the most organic and natural. Oh, my poor baby's crying. Probably have to go in a little bit.
Poor Boo Boo. You
can
bring her over.
But I do think there's a lot of value for looking at that, because if the experience were more external, those things I think would certainly be impactful, like the ability to self-soothe in a rocking chair or having blue paint on the wall. But I think that the mental inner world experience is so strong for them on these doses. These are significant doses. So my guess would be that probably in these studies, we wouldn't see much of a change, but I think we'd see a huge change if they were outside, or if they weren't in eye shades, because then the external environment would be more important. They'd be like, why does this room feel so dry? Like, it's so unnatural. But we keep taking them back to what's going on inside. If the trauma doesn't come up in the session at some point, we do make an effort to bring it up, because we think it's so important for them to be processing some of that. And usually it comes up on its own, but there's kind of like a bit of an objective, like, this is your opportunity. We tell them, look, you're getting this opportunity, kind of like a playground. Take the experiences and collect them. Just collect as many of the experiences as you can. And in the following days, we'll talk about them and we'll decompress them, but just collect what you can. If there's a staircase, go up it. If there's a door, open it. If there's a window, open it. If there's someone there, look them in the face. Trust the arc of the boomerang. You will come back home. So it's a lot about where will their mind go when the sensorium are really off. I think it's nice that it's not a real sterile medical space, but I think the space is secondary to what's happening inside for them. So
that is research that can be done eventually, or maybe it needs to be done in vivo. Hello, vivo.
Yeah, I think it would be interesting to see how a corporation or processes would change based on those factors too. Because I think that's just they're more aware of that, and you know, yeah, people in the medicine will be aware of it too. So there's definitely utility in researching it, but unfortunately, our study doesn't take those points.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's unfortunate that the people who are designing basically every space that humans live in our 3D world are designers whose interest is in creating something aesthetically pleasing, but really with very little attention to what's going on below the surface. And yet those things affect us. We know they do. I mean, the best we know light is, you know, we know light is important. We know having outdoor space is important. We know fresh air, these kinds of things. But yeah, anyway.
Asher, I'm gonna send you a cool podcast about that. I listened to that like a couple months ago, and you're gonna like love it. Like it talks about architecture and the human condition. So
yeah, and I think feng shui and like a lot of classical principles on aesthetics are really relevant in that kind of a setting. How the energy flows in a room. At least that's what I resonate with the most.
Yeah, and this is Diana again. I just have a quick comment just to piggyback off of that. You know, it's really interesting how in the hospital setting where people are supposed to be healing and getting better, it's probably the most untherapeutic environment in terms of visually, with sound, with smells, with it. It just blows my mind. I mean, I'm healthy and I show up to work and I'm just completely drained afterwards, you know, the alarms of, you know, everything. And it's just, it blows my mind. And then the food that we serve to patients, I mean, there's just on so many levels, it's so toxic. And I think that that's why it's so important, Dr. Maysa, for us to be in there, like infiltrating, right? Because we like, otherwise nothing's going to change, right? Because we have all these people that are making these decisions. They're so disconnected from what's actually, what actually is promoting health.
I think the consumer, so to speak, because we're kind of like consumers of that healthcare system, are going to have to demand something different. For example, if enough families are bringing in essential oil diffusers, you know, and in one study they showed spraying that On Guard essential oil through the vents of the hospital decreased infection rates. I mean, I just don't feel like a hospital is a place of healing as it's designed in the Western world. The MOA Center, as created in the Japanese tradition, says that the hospital is on the farm. And, you know, in India, the patients are fed khichdi, which is very simple, basic food. You know, they're not allowed to order a hamburger like I saw in my training at, you know, in Houston.
Oh my gosh. And you know what the answer is? They say, well, they say, oh, well, at least they're eating something. And I'm like, what do you mean they're eating shit? They may as well literally eat shit. I actually had a patient the other day who, I'm in the pediatric ICU, and her mother is actually in an Ayurvedic doctorate program. And so it was really cool because she was getting her, you know, her classmates were preparing this khichdi and bringing herbs and so she had discussed it with the cardiothoracic surgeon. He was actually very supportive, and it was really beautiful to to just see how she was just doing her thing, and it was, and I applauded her, and I was like, we need more of this, and we just had really great connection. But it was really cool to see that, because I do agree that you're right, it does have to come from the patients. They have to start they have to complain because they're essentially the clients, right?
Yeah, their insurance, they're buying into the whole system, they're funding the thing. If they don't show up, the hospital doesn't make money, even though having a COVID diagnosis gets your hospital 20% more on the admission, or being on a ventilator gets them more money. It's like, if you stop consuming that, that's the power. The power is in your dollar in this country right now. The power is in where you're choosing to spend that dollar. And, you know, they said that a lot of heart attacks and strokes are not coming into the hospital. The numbers are low. These people are having these incidents at home. They're so afraid to go in. And let's say you do go in, you know, are you really going to get the kind of care that's going to be holistic and, you know, like this aspect of getting the right food and nutrition? So I think there needs to be a new model. I've dreamt about it for a long time, having a healing center of sorts where people of all backgrounds are involved in the care of somebody, and nobody is hierarchically more educated or better than another. It's just a team collaborative approach, and you use the patient as the directive, you know, what are their goals for this hospitalization? Why do they want to get well? You know, maybe it's to see their daughter graduate. Maybe it's not to change their lifestyle. Maybe it is. So it's like all these forces need to come together, and yes, to demand better, to demand like, you know, better looking rooms or some kind of musical stimulation while someone's in coma, so they're actually with it to a degree, you know, essential oils, scents, things like that. So it's not really a place of healing. I feel you. I struggle with that a lot myself, and yet I tend to go back to working in that system again, to try and like shine some light in it, because if people like you and I stop doing that, I don't know, maybe that's what we need to do. Maybe we need to go elsewhere, but I think if just a few people even wake up and start to do these things,
or make something new, you know, we can come together as architects, as builders, as workers, as therapists, as artists, as designers. You know, if we come together, we can actually come up with something that can replace the old system, but it needs to be a system that actually works better. And I always have been dreaming about the same thing. You know, I've been interested in the medical sciences since I was in high school, when, you know, went to medical school, burned out. And I got to tell you what, like for me, it was like, wait, for me now, it's like, wait, why isn't the farm connected to the hospital, connected to, they all can be connected, and we can have a system that works regeneratively like that, you know?
Yeah, these patients need fresh air and actual natural sunlight, not these radiation exposed lights that are in pretty much all houses now in all hospitals. So totally, MOA I think is a good model. You know, I think they've got a pretty good model.
I think ashrams are kind of cool too. Ashrams kind of show you an interesting ancient model as well, you know, of healing.
Yeah, you guys, I'm losing steam right now. I'm gonna have to go, and my sweet baby needs some more loving. So
yeah, please give her our love. Please, everybody who tuned in, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
Have a good night, Maysa. Everybody,
I think you have my contact information, right? You can make my email available to everybody.
Yes.
Yeah, and that way, if there are more questions, I'm happy to field them. You know.
Yeah.
I'm still working on my website. I'm gonna release some really cool technology just for free for everybody to play around with their health histories. So if people shoot me an email, I can put them on my, I don't know. I'm not good at this. I need someone to manage my stuff digitally. I like to be kind of distant from the technology, but there is a really cool program called Living Matrix out there, and you can just graph your whole life and find the correlations. And it's basically the most cutting edge technology I've seen for learning about someone's real health history from all aspects, environmental, toxin exposure, this and that. So I'm going to integrate that into my practice, and you guys can take the quiz for free. It's cool. Like a 2-hour thing. It's a long thing, but I guarantee you it's worth it. It's very insightful. So blessings to everyone. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being awesome.
Nice.
Have a good night. Give the baby our love. Give the baby our love.
I will. I'm going to go get big kisses right now.
A big laughter. Give her a nice little hug and laughter, you know?
Oh, and she's a giggler.
Thank you, Maysa. Thank you, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Awesome. Cosmic Labyrinth. Down. Cosmic Labyrinth. Another Cosmic Labyrinth. Yeah. What's up, guys? How do we stop this live stream?
Hey. All right.
Change my video. You locked me out of my video.
All right, guys. I'm starving. I'm starving like Marvin.
Yeah. Same here. Okay. Ciao, ciao.
Awesome. Have a good night, everyone.
Awesome show, guys. Have a good night. Sleep well.
Definitely. Bye.
Bye.